Chapter 1846. At that moment, Bai Wei also had a very bad feeling. According to his original plan, regardless of whether he succeeded or not, fellow Taoist Tai Yi would eventually agree to his terms. Since he had the teleportation treasure, he would be able to escape. However, he did not expect to run into such a dangerous situation. Now, he could either stay and fight together with Taoist priest Daoyi, or abandon him and leave. After weighing the pros and cons for a moment, he transmitted his voice to Taoist priest Daoyi. Taoist priest Daoyi, we can't do this. Taoist priest Daoyi's expression was extremely gloomy. When Deng Zhang, Qi Yao, and the others left, he did not say anything because he knew that he would only be asking to be humiliated. As for Bai Wei, he did not expect him to sacrifice his life to help him. He sneered and said in a mocking tone, "Then what does Guangxing Tianzuan want?" Bai Wei said sincerely, "Fellow Taoist, I alone cannot compete with the human Dao's Yuan Zun. It is better to let go of the present and wait for the right time." He paused and said, "Fellow Taoist has an undying and indestructible body. If you are unwilling to serve the human Tao, the human Tao can't do anything to you. At most, it can only suppress you. If we are outside, we can try to help fellow Taoist escape. If we can't do it in this era, then we'll have a chance in the next one." Taoist priest Daoyi also knew that there was no other way. What Bai Wei said was actually correct, and he could only rely on him. Therefore, he suppressed the anger and resentment in his heart and tried his best to soften his tone. "Fellow Taoist, don't forget the promise you made that day. If there is a chance in the future, help me escape." Bai Wei said solemnly, "Fellow Taoist, don't worry. I will keep my promise." He did not intend to break his promise. Even if the human Tao was no longer afraid of this primordial treasure, it was still different in his hands than in the hands of his opponent. If there was a change in fate, or if there was a chance, he would find a way to invite this person back. Taoist priest Daoyi did not say anything. Bai Wei was slightly relieved. In fact, he had already made up his mind about Taoist priest Daoyi's attitude today. However, being able to persuade him with kind words was the best result. He raised his head, bowed, and said, "I have thought about it, and I am willing to listen to Lord Xuanyuan's advice." Zhang Yan had been waiting just now. He believed that the other party would make the right choice. Seeing the other party bow his head, Zhang Yan said calmly, "Then I won't stay here any longer." Bai Wei knew that his identity was not welcomed by others, so he cupped his hands once more and hurriedly left. After he left, Zhang Yan turned to look at Taoist priest Daoyi and said, "Fellow Taoist priest Daoyi, are you willing to surrender to the Tao and serve me?" Taoist priest Daoyi snorted and said mockingly, "It's not impossible. As long as the Tao of Tao can help me achieve the Tao, after I shed off this body, I can use it to control the body." Zhang Yan smiled. It was a good plan. A primordial supreme treasure would need a lot of primordial jades to achieve the Great Way. Even if it succeeded, the body it left behind would not be as powerful as before. At most, it would be as powerful as a Taoist treasure. What use would it be then? He said, "You have disturbed the Tao of Tao several times. Since you are not willing to surrender, I have no choice but to take you down first." Taoist priest Daoyi sneered a few times, pointed to the sky, and swore, "Back then, your Tao of Tao suppressed me for an era, but in the end didn't you still break free? Don't be complacent. When the cycle of the era changes, the heavenly Tao will change. At that time, if I can break free again, I will do my best to destroy your Tao of Tao." Zhang Yan's eyes flickered. As soon as this person made this oath, it was tantamount to cutting off the last thread of fate between him and the Tao of Tao. It was impossible for the two sides to compromise again. He said calmly, "Since this is your choice, I will fulfill your wish." He reached out and made a grabbing motion, and a monstrous magical power pressed down. Taoist priest Daoyi seemed to know that resistance was useless, so he stood there without moving. Suddenly, he turned into a golden bead and was put into his sleeve. When Dan Yi and the others saw this scene, they couldn't help but sigh with emotion. In the past, the power of the Tai golden bead was enough to suppress all worlds. When it came, it could be said to be insufferably arrogant. The Tao of Tao was once like an egg in danger. Just now, the foundation that had been re-established could collapse at any time. But now, the whole situation had been reversed. When they were invited by Zhang Yan, they thought that it would be a fierce battle no less than the last time. They didn't expect that this trip would go so smoothly. None of these heretic mighty figures dared to fight with them. In the end, Taoist priest Dowie could only put on a brave front, but in fact, everyone could see that he was already putting on a brave front. Zhang Yan thought that this was a matter of course. Previously, when he showed the means to barely resist the Tai golden bead, it had already made Bai Wei and the others afraid. Now that he had shown an unstoppable magical power, he naturally didn't need to make a move to intimidate the enemy. Of course, if the Tai golden bead was suddenly willing to be sacrificed, even if it was only for a short moment, things would not be as simple as they were now. At that time, he was afraid that he would have to use both qi and strength to have a certain chance of subduing it. This was what he was worried about before. Fortunately, this time, he first calculated the cause and effect, chose the most suitable time, and didn't even care about the people behind the scenes, so no unforeseen events occurred. Danny said, "Fellow Taoist, after capturing this person, how do you plan to deal with him?" Zhang Yan said, "The Tai golden bead is indestructible, and the place where my Tao of Tao suppressed back then is still there. I plan to place it there first." Michihito Ichito understood the meaning of the words, and showed a hint of interest. "Oh, fellow Taoist, do you have any other means to deal with this person?" Zhang Yan smiled. "I do have some thoughts about this, but it's hard to make a decision now. I need to try to know whether it will work or not." Fu Qingming said, "No matter what, without the Tai golden bead, those heretics probably won't be able to cause any trouble before the cycle of the era. We might be able to live in peace." Dan Yi and Michihito Ichito both nodded. Zhang Yan said a few more words to the three of them, then bid them farewell, and went to Kunsher continent. Once he entered the realm, he turned around and landed on a floating island. This was Baoyuo Island, the birthplace of the Tai golden bead, and also the place used to suppress this person in the last era. He landed on a ring-shaped star platform, in which there was a concave notch. It was obvious that this was the place where the Tai golden bead had been placed. It was built by the joint efforts of many great figures of the Tao of Tao in the last era, and could be said to be exceptionally strong. There were originally countless restrictions around it, but after the era changed, they no longer existed. Only the altar that imprisoned the primordial treasure remained. He took out the Tai golden bead. It seemed to know that it could not escape the fate of being suppressed, and began to tremble incessantly. Unfortunately, it was useless under the suppression of his magic power. He placed it there, and with a press of his hand, endless magic power surged out and firmly suppressed it. With a flick of his sleeve, countless restrictive spells appeared, and in an instant, the floating sky continent was transported into another realm. He looked at this scene but fell into deep thought. Although Taoist priest Dowie was wily, he could not control it himself. This was his fatal weakness, and he himself knew this, so he desperately sought a chance to achieve Tao in order to get out of this predicament. All his plans could be said to be for this purpose, but he still failed. From this, it could be seen that not only did the Weili have to belong to himself, but he also had to be able to use it freely. Although his magic power was endless at the moment, and he could resist the Tai Weili, in terms of attack, he could not reach that level. In other words, in terms of control, there was still room for improvement. As he thought about this, he had a glimmer of understanding. He thought to himself, if it's as I think, maybe it won't take me so long to deal with that person. At this moment, after leaving Bushutian, Bai Wei looked back and could not help but feel pity. Just now, he thought that Taoist priest Dowie might have a chance to agree to be refined by the master when he was forced to this point. If that was really the case, what was the Tao of Tao? With this treasure, he could suppress all things in the world. But unfortunately, Taoist priest Dowie refused to give in the end. He thought to himself, in fact, this result is enough to prove that the scene of the future I saw earlier was not an illusion. Since that's the case, it's time to take that step. His figure moved, and just as he was about to return to the Miaokong realm, he suddenly felt something in his heart. His expression changed slightly, and after thinking for a moment, he changed his chi and escaped into a world that just now had opened up. Looking around, he saw Deng Zhang sitting on a peak of the clouds, as if waiting for his arrival. He walked to the front, cupped his hands, and asked in a questioning tone, "Fellow Taoist Deng?" Deng Zhang returned the greeting and said, "Heavenly Lord Guangxing, if I may be so bold as to ask, what do you intend to do after returning this time?" Bai Wei looked at him and said with a smile, "When did fellow Taoist Deng become interested in my actions?" He paused for a moment, then said, "Since fellow Taoist Deng cultivates that emotionless method, then I will naturally return to the Tao of inaction." Deng Zhang said, "The Tao of inaction? Fellow Taoist, aren't you afraid that this will go against the fundamental superior method?" Bai Wei raised his eyebrows and said, "If I remember correctly, the method that fellow Taoist cultivates rejects all principles outside of the emotionless method as heresy. Since when did you become interested in the fundamental superior method of our generation?" Deng Zhang said expressionlessly, "Those who are powerful will live, and those who are weak will die. Those who are powerful will be like riding a boat with the current, and those who are weak will be like crossing the sea with their bare hands. It's clear who is superior and who is inferior. Although I cultivate the Tao of emotionless, I'm not a pedantic person. The Tao has already obtained the general trend, and if I continue to be conservative and reject the masses, I will only be digging my own grave." At this point, he said solemnly, "Our three sects are inferior to the Tao to begin with. If we can't support each other, wouldn't we be at the mercy of this generation?" Bai Wei sighed and said, "How could I not know what fellow Taoists said? It's just that without fellow Taoist Tai, we have lost a great deal of help. We won't have another chance in this era." Deng Zhang looked at him for a moment, then said, "Fine, if I don't show my sincerity today, I don't think fellow Taoist will believe me." At this point, he waved his sleeve, and a scene instantly appeared in front of the two of them. Bai Wei looked at it, and his pupils shrank. The scene he saw now was actually almost the same as the scene of the future that appeared in his mind that day. Chapter 1847. Deng Zhang waited for Bai Wei to take a look before dispersing the images with a wave of his sleeve. He said, "Did you see it clearly, Heavenly Lord Guangxing?" Even though Bai Wei had many questions in his heart, he didn't show them on his face. He looked straight at him and said, "Fellow Taoist, you must have a reason for waiting here and letting me see this. Please speak frankly." Deng Zhang said seriously, "The outer realm demonic beings are undying and indestructible, and they have the support of the anti-heaven and earth. As long as they aren't suppressed, everything is fine. But you and I..." He pointed at Bai Wei, then at himself. "You and I already have no way out. Why don't we act according to the will of the heavens and use it to resist humanity?" Bai Wei didn't say anything, as if he was thinking about something. After a long while, he said, "I won't hide it from fellow Taoist. I've seen these images before as well. Apart from some slight differences in some details, they're more or less the same." Deng Zhang was slightly surprised, but he wasn't too surprised. He nodded and said, "It looks like I'm not the only one who sensed it. That's fine too. Fellow Taoist should know that I'm not fooling you." Bai Wei chuckled and said, "Whether it's real or fake will be clear with a single look. What I've seen here has already been verified, so I don't have any doubts." Deng Zhang looked at him and said, "Then, Heavenly Lord Guangxing, what choice do you intend to make?" Bai Wei pondered for a moment and said, "It looks like we can only go to that realm first. However, since we've seen these images in the future, it shouldn't be difficult for those three to see them either. Why don't we go and ask them? In any case, our three clans are allies. Even if they aren't willing, we've at least greeted them." Deng Zhang nodded and said, "That makes sense." The two of them discussed the matter for a long time. Once everything was settled, they left this world and headed for the spirit world together. Because the two of them didn't conceal their presence, Qi Yao and the other two sensed them immediately and came out to greet them. After greeting them outside, they invited the two into the realm. There was no daylight in the netherworld, and everything was murky and murky. There was not a hint of spiritual vigor in this place, and it was filled with indescribable things that came from the reverse heaven and earth. Bai Wei and Deng Zhang acted as if they did not see them at all. Normal cultivators would definitely not be able to stay here for long, but it did not affect them at all. The two of them followed Qi Yao and the others into a stone cave and sat down. Qi Yao was the first to speak. Congratulations on your safe escape. May I know how fellow Taoist Tai is doing? Bai Wei sighed and said, fellow Taoist, luck is not good, and he fell into the hands of the people of Tao. At this moment, he must have been suppressed by that Taoist Zhang. Qi Yao sighed and said, it's not that we don't want to help him. The people path is strong and that priest Zhang is strong. Even if we stay, there's no use. We'll just repeat the same mistakes. Bai Wei agreed. Otherwise, he wouldn't have made the same choice. Heng Jing interrupted, may I know why the two of you are here today? Could it be that they were going to deal with Yuan Zun again? Bai Wei said, I don't dare to think about dealing with humanity anymore. Today, I have come here only to find a way to survive together with everyone. Everyone, please watch. He pointed with his finger, directly replaying the future scene that he had seen just now. Qi Yao and the other two narrowed their eyes when they saw this. Deng Zhang asked, I have a question. Have you all seen this before? Lan Su was about to speak when Qi Yao raised his hand to stop her. He admitted, I won't hide it from the two of you. We sensed it earlier and saw the same scene. Even though there are some differences, it's more or less the same. Deng Zhang cupped his hands and said, thank you for telling me. Qi Yao looked at the two and said solemnly, I thought it was the connection between heaven and man, but it seems like there's more to it than meets the eye. People like them could see scenes of the future from time to time. However, due to the difference in cultivation, not everyone could see the same scene. Someone must have done something. Deng Zhang said, fellow Taoist, you should have noticed it as well. To be able to send such an image into my divine will without a sound, this person must be very capable. He might be the one who messed with Bu Su Tian's heaven secret. Following Zhang Yanqing's breakthrough to the true Yang stage third layer, he had forced the person behind him into the myriad K star stream. Now, heaven's secrets had returned to its previous state. If not for this, he would not have been able to observe the changes in karma heaven's secrets so easily. Qi Yao pondered for a while and said, moreover, there is another region outside the world. That Taoist Zhang and another person's Qi activity each occupy half a day. There are not many people in this world who can contend against them. Moreover, this person suddenly appeared and I have never seen him before. The person that fellow Taoist Deng mentioned might be this person. Bai Wei said, this person is so powerful. Not only can he create another world outside of Bu Su Tian and the Void Primal Sea, but he can also fight Taoist Zhang without being at a disadvantage. He might be an almighty from the last era. Now that he sent his divine decree to me, I think he wants to show off his skills and invite me to fight against the enemy of the human path. Now that Taoist Deng and I are going there, what do you think? Qi Yao thought for a while and discussed with Heng Jing and Lan Su for a long time before responding, we have offended the human path several times. If you two go and we stay in the Void Primal Sea, we don't know when they will find us. Fine, I am willing to go with you too. Actually, they knew that the human path wouldn't do anything to them for now. However, knowing was one thing. Even an ordinary Taoist cultivator would not allow others to decide their life and death, let alone the mighty figures of their realm. Now that there was a mighty figure who could fight against the Tao of Tao and seemed to have the intention to rope them in, it was a good opportunity for them to join him. The worst result would be being destroyed by the Tao of Tao, but if they were lucky enough to win, they could turn the situation around. Bai Wei said, we will go to that world together. When would it be convenient for you? Qi Yao said, anytime. At this moment, Deng Zhang suddenly said, everyone, there is still a demon Lord Qizhou here. I wonder if you can persuade him? Qi Yao shook his head and said, Demon Lord Qizhou is guarding the barrier between the two worlds. He won't leave easily. There's no need to ask. Deng Zhang nodded. This demon lord never participated in battles and was very mysterious. The human path wouldn't provoke him. After the five came to an agreement, they concealed their auras and used their arts to travel through space, heading toward 1K star stream. In Bushu Heaven, Zhang Yan didn't leave the Tianyu star platform. Instead, he sat there and meditated. The Tai golden bead was at the same level as him, and it was formed from the essence of heaven and earth. As a cultivator, unless he reached the upper realm, he would never be able to reach the power it had after being refined. But he could use it as a reference and see some wonderful things. There was one more thing he needed to do. After the Tai golden bead was suppressed, its consciousness had fallen into silence and wouldn't come out to cause trouble for the time being. Especially with his supernatural power suppressing it, outsiders who wanted to break it would have to go through him first. Bai Wei had said that unless there were any unexpected changes or if an almighty upper realm intervened, the Tai golden bead wouldn't have a chance in this era. The situation was indeed so, but it was better to be safe than sorry. He had to find a way to cut off the possibility of it returning to the modern world. His method was to first eliminate its spirit and then grind down its divine qi. The manifestation of Taoist was brought here by Bai Wei and the others with great supernatural power. He could naturally find a way to kill it and make it lose its place in the modern world. Once it lost its consciousness, it would lose the ability to actively resist. Then he could use his supreme magic power to wear it down and refine it. This was a long process of resistance, but his magic power was endless, so he could afford to wait. Even if he could not succeed, he could still observe the principles behind its operation. Several days later, a rainbow flashed in the sky, and a Taoist appeared not far away. It was Elder Peng of Green Jade Palace. When he arrived above Tianyu, he saw Zhang Yan's figure from afar and quickly lowered his head. He solemnly bowed and said, "Greetings, exalted Lord." Zhang Yan nodded slightly and retracted his aura. He said, "Elder Peng, please come closer to talk." Elder Peng Daoren thanked him and came to the altar. He then bowed again and said, "Not long ago, the palace lord sent a message to me, asking all the cultivators of Yuhuan heavens to listen to exalted lord's arrangements. Therefore, I'm here to listen to your orders." Zhang Yan said, "Not long ago, Elder Peng must have sensed it. It's called 1K Star Stream. Now, I'm fighting for this place with an almighty being. Wherever I preach, that place will be the place where I spread my spiritual wisdom. However, that person and I are restraining each other, so it's hard for us to interfere. If this stalemate continues, I don't know how long it will take for the winner to be decided. Therefore, I need you to enter the world to educate the natives and take over this place." Elder Peng quickly replied, "I understand. There are billions of cultivators in Yuhuan heavens, and they can all be used by exalted Lord." Zhang Yan said, "This place is vast and boundless. It's not inferior to the void primordial sea. There are also void gods and monsters running amok. Don't be careless and be careful. You can make arrangements for what to do here. There's no need to ask me again." Although there were countless cultivators in Yuhuan heavens, there were only a few who could really make a difference in the frontal attack of 1K Star Stream. This was because most of the lower generation disciples couldn't cross the void. Those who could do this had to be at least in the Grotto Heaven realm. Although ordinary cultivators could travel by boat, 1K Star Stream didn't have the innate chaotic vitality light. However, there were countless gods and monsters in the void. Without the protection of someone with great mana, it was impossible to cross the void. Forcing it would only be a burden. Therefore, there were only two best ways. One was to enter the world to preach, and the other was to build the welcoming altar. The former would take a long time, while the latter would be effective quickly. However, it would easily attract the attention of the natives. Therefore, there were pros and cons to each method. However, he wasn't going to ask about the details. He just gave a general explanation and pointed out the direction of action. As for how to carry out the plan, he would leave it to his subordinates to plan and arrange. At this moment, he suddenly sensed something. He turned around and saw Bai Wei and the others entering 1K Star Stream. His eyes flashed. If he wasn't mistaken, this should be the secret line that the mastermind had buried in the river of karma and heavenly secrets. He didn't care much about it. Without the Tai golden bead, the three heretic sects would be the same no matter where they went. In reality, they were no longer a threat to him. Instead, The mastermind had many secrets that were worth investigating. When he took over 1K star stream, it wouldn't be difficult to understand everything. Chapter 1848. Zhang Yan gave a few more instructions to Elder Peng and dismissed him. At this time, he focused his divine sense and discovered that not long after the 5 people entered the 1K galaxy stream, they had disappeared from his senses. It was obvious that they had entered the concealment of the aura behind them. However, these were not important. As long as he followed the prescribed order and invaded that domain step by step, it would be fine. What he had to pay attention to might be the little tricks of the person behind him. He looked at the tiny golden bead on the star platform. Logically speaking, if he was able to deceive this natural cardinal treasure, then it would be a greater threat to him. However, it seemed like he hadn't done so. It was unknown if he was unable to affect this treasure or if he was afraid he wouldn't be able to control it. Of course, it was also possible that it was a combination of the two. After all, if he didn't have his Dharma body, then he would definitely be unable to control this treasure himself. He could only leave it to someone else, and there were many variables in this. After thinking for a while, he did not delve deeper into this matter. Instead, he continued to use his mana to wear down the treasure's essence and spirituality. At the same time, he used the resistance to verify his Tao. In the 1K star stream, in a nameless world, Zhang Chan and Hua Yingling were meditating in an underground cave. Following Zhang Yan's orders, they had been attacking the outer world heavens region. However, the descendants of deities and monsters were not easy to deal with, especially after the Jade Star Upper Palace was almost completely annihilated. The other forces were extremely vigilant. After asking the Void Mother, they knew that the followers of the demon god were invading. If their territory was taken over, not only would their foundation be taken away, even the Tao of bloodlines that they relied on would collapse. Hence, they all sent people to defend. Right now, Zhang Yan and the person behind him were each occupying one side of the Qi dynamic. If the cultivators were to initiate an attack, they would have to first leave the place where the spiritual vigor was abundant. Therefore, Zhang Chan and the rest could only rely on pills to maintain their mana after every fierce battle. They had been in this world for a long time and had fought with the natives no less than 10 times. Although they were able to defeat the enemy every time, the next time they came, their numbers would be even greater. Fortunately, they understood that the resistance they would encounter at the beginning when they invaded another world would undoubtedly be intense. The only thing they could do now was to firmly stay here and wait for reinforcements to arrive. Once the situation opened up, it would be much easier for them to do things. After a long time, the two of them heard a sharp cry and looked up. Their gazes instantly passed through the layers of obstacles and looked into the sky. They saw a giant bird with wings that covered the sky flying over their heads. It would stop from time to time and circle around in a certain place. Zhang Chan teased, "Looks like you're searching for us?" Hua Yingling said, "There are Jinji concealing me, they can't find me for now." Behind the two of them, an altar was gradually taking shape with the help of dozens of captured monsters. Once this place was successfully constructed and the time was right, he would be able to find a way to guide more cultivators from the Xiong continent over. The 1K star stream was different from the void primordial sea. Here, there were cracks in the void everywhere, and they were rooted in the heavens and realms. Therefore, as long as there was an altar to guide them, they could leap over. However, there were many restrictions to this method. One was the treasures used to construct the altar, and the other was the cultivation of the person controlling the altar. Even if the two conditions were met, there was still a certain possibility of failure. If something happened, the cultivator who was received would either fall into the void or disappear mysteriously. The former was still manageable. As long as they weren't targeted by gods and monsters, there was still a chance that they could survive. However, the latter was impossible to find. At this time, there was a ripple of light on the Jinji. An old man with a high forehead and bright red skin walked in. He came to the inner room and walked up the stairs to the high platform the two of them were meditating on. He bowed and said, "Greetings, Zenrens." Hua Yingling nodded and said, "Elder Qi, how is the outside world?" This elder Qi had originally been an elder of Jade's Star Upper Palace. When Zhang Yan's clone had come that day, these people had either been imprisoned or killed. However, there were some that were willing to submit to them. This person was one of them. Zhang Chan and the others were happy about this. Due to the severe lack of manpower on their side, it was impossible to expand outwards with just them. Originally, it was best to wait for more cultivators to arrive and stabilize the corners of the formation before expanding outwards. However, Zhang Chan was very clear that this involved the battle between his master and another great being. There was no room for delay. Of course, the sooner the better. So he did not hesitate to use the natives. And with the restriction of the spell contract, he was not afraid of this person resisting. Qi Elder Daoran said, "With the maze here, the number of people searching this place has increased. They seem to be suspicious of this place. If there are any discoveries, I will immediately report to you two great Zenrins." Because he knew that Zhang Chan and the others were still in this world, there were many descendants of the monsters here. He did not have to worry about being discovered if he mixed in. Hua Yingling thought for a moment and said, "The other generation has many people and countless monsters under their command. If they do not care about the cost and investigate one by one, they will definitely find something wrong with this place." Zhang Chan said, "Oh, the altar will probably need another 10 days or so to be repaired. I don't know if there will be enough time." Hua Yingling smiled and said, "We can think of a way to delay it. Once my Fa Li recovers, I will go out and make some noise. We can temporarily divert their attention. Delaying for a few days shouldn't be a problem." Zhang Chan agreed, "This is a good idea." He laughed, "Even if it doesn't work, we can just fight with this generation. The people that can use the other powers will be dealt with by sect leaders Sima and Zhenrenpeng." Hua Yingling saw that Elder Qi was hesitant to speak and said, "Elder Qi, is there anything else?" Elder Qi hurriedly said, "There is a large blood descendant sect here. Their sect leader, Mo Mao, is an old acquaintance of mine. After I explained the pros and cons to him, he is willing to rely on us and has already made a vow. Can you two great Zenrins take the time to meet him?" Hua Yingling said, "Does he believe in the Void Mother?" Qi Elder Daoran said, "He was originally an elder of Distant Star's Upper Palace. After the Upper Palace stars dispersed, he secretly offered sacrifices not long ago." Hua Yingling thought for a moment and said, "Right now, the altar is at a crucial point of construction. It is not convenient for us to meet him. You can tell him to wait here. After I conquer this Jie, I will send him to Xionglu to cleanse his body." After they found out that there was an existence like the Void Mother behind them, they understood that even if these people were trustworthy, there was no guarantee that the great being behind them would not find out. Therefore, any blood descendant of a clan elder level had to use Ling Qi to cleanse the divine essence of nether space in their body on Xionglu. Only then could they be truly trusted. For example, if Elder Qi hadn't been forcefully cleansed of the divine essence of nether space by Zhang Yan's great Fa Li, they wouldn't dare to keep him by their side. At this time, Zhang Chan took out a jade scroll and threw it out, saying, "Elder Qi, there are some techniques recorded in here. Take it and cultivate." Elder Qi was overjoyed and went forward to take it. He looked at it for a while and kept it in his arms. He bowed and said, "Thank you, great master, for the technique." Without the divine essence of nether space, he had no way to improve. However, he obtained another cultivation method from the cultivators of the 9 continents. Especially the cultivation method of mystic cultivators, it was very suitable for a blood descendant of a deity like him to cultivate. Even if he couldn't use Ling Qi, it didn't matter. At the same time, outside this world, in the crack of the void, Sima Quan and Peng Xiang sent out many demons to roam around. As long as there was a blood descendant of a deity with a strange power, they would immediately eliminate it. Previously, they had fought with the elder of Yao Xing Upper Palace and captured quite a number of captives. They already knew how to deal with this generation. Before the thing known as the divine essence of nether space was refined, it could only compete with the cultivators of the Grotto Heaven. Therefore, they only needed to use the previous method to trap it in the fantasy field and then wear down its essence, qi, spirit, and will. Actually, according to their original plan, they didn't care about the scattered worlds first. Instead, they gathered all their forces and launched a surprise attack on forces like Yao Xing Upper Palace. They didn't expect to wipe out these big forces. As long as they could destroy a few of them, they would be able to cut off the connection between many deity sections. Then, it would be much more convenient to do things in the future. Unfortunately, in the end, they realized that this idea was not feasible. This was because the power of these blood descendants in the void would become even more tyrannical. Moreover, these forces weren't fixed in one place, so it was difficult to accurately capture them. Moreover, they had an endless supply of reinforcements. Because of these reasons, they could only choose to invade the world one by one. And on the other side, within the void primordial sea, two strange-looking people suddenly appeared. If Han Dingyi and the others were here, they would be able to tell at a glance that these two were the blood descendants of deities. As the 1K stellar stream was merging with the void primordial sea and Bu Su Tian, it wasn't just cultivators who were heading towards the 1K stellar stream. There were also a few blood descendants of deities from this world who had infiltrated the void primordial sea. These two people were Li Chen and Luan. They were both from the Western Great Palace. Compared to the distant Star Upper Palace, this sect's strength was not inferior. This time, they had come under the orders of the sect to secretly investigate the background of the cultivators. Originally, they had tried to offer sacrifices to ask about this, but the Void Mother did not respond at all. This situation had happened before, which meant that more sacrifices were needed here. However, the elders of the palace admitted that they couldn't afford the price here, so in the end, they decided to directly send people to investigate. When Li and Luan arrived, they realized that they couldn't communicate with each other in the void. They could only use secret techniques and communicate with their consciousness. Li Chen said, "Is this the foreign realm beyond the heavens?" Feeling the innate chaotic destruction vitality light entering his body, he had a bad premonition. We need to find a place to hide as soon as possible. Luan also felt his heart palpitate. The two of them randomly found a deserted world and entered it. Although there was no spiritual opportunity here, they didn't need it. Li Chen then sat down cross-legged and said, "Let me cast a spell and see if I can find the person who arrived here first." They weren't the first to arrive here. In fact, when the two worlds merged, many deities and blood descendants had involuntarily entered this place. However, the blood descendants relied on their physical bodies and usually required a large amount of blood. If they didn't have these, they would need to refine the divine essence of the underworld. Usually, as long as they used this item, they would be found. However, after casting a spell for a long time, Li Chen realized that it was useless. He said dejectedly, "It seems like this place is very different from the 1K stellar stream. If we want to complete the task that the hall has ordered, we have to find our own way." Luan whispered, "Elderly, let me say something that I shouldn't say. It's actually a good thing if we can't find them." Li Chen glanced at him but didn't agree. He only reminded, "Be careful with your words. Don't think that the Void Mother doesn't know what we are doing now that we are away from the 1K stellar stream." Luan's heart skipped a beat and he quickly shut his mouth. Li Chen said, "Where there are strange people, there will be strange forces. We can try to find them along the way. Maybe we can find something." Chapter 1849. 3 years passed in the 1K star stream. Due to the timely arrival of reinforcements, Zhang Chan and the rest finally managed to gain a foothold in this world. After another year, they occupied all of it and named it Dharma Chief Heaven. All the natives here were either killed or subdued. The deities and their descendants that came from outside were all chased out by them. After settling down for a while, they brought the cultivators from Bu Su Tian to conquer more than 10 worlds. However, in the next 2 years, the progress was not very smooth, and they did not even manage to conquer a single world. The main reason for this was that although there were many cultivators who entered the 1K star stream, compared to the natives here, there was still a large gap. Although they did occupy many worlds, in reality, because they had to take care of everything, their strength was scattered. Under the endless attacks of the deities and monsters, they could only choose to defend. They no longer had the strength to expand outwards and could only slow down their pace. In a palace hall of Dharma Chief Heaven, a bright pearl hung high, shining brilliantly. Spiritual vigor was gathered from all directions, forming waves of water. Zhang Chan, Hua Yingling, Gong Qi, Mo Wan, and 4 other people from the Grotto Heaven from the Yuhuan Heaven were discussing what to do next. A silver-robed Taoist said with a solemn expression and a loud and clear voice, "We can conclude that these natives have retreated greatly in the past 2 years and given up on several worlds. They were not repelled by us, but by them on their own initiative. Their goal is to wait for us to occupy them, and after their strength is divided, they will restrain us. However, other than doing something in the beginning, we have not achieved anything in the past 2 years. We need to think of a way to change our current strategy." His name was Chang Hu, and he was from Green Jade Palace. This time, he was ordered to enter the Wanke Star Stream to fight against the school of deities and monsters. As this place did not hinder them from obtaining karma points, and Fu Qingming once said that those who made great contributions could be promoted to elder, he wanted to fight for dominance here. That was why he pointed out that what Zhang Chan and the rest did was wrong. Zhang Chan chuckled and glanced at him. "We don't have to do this." It looked like they were being held back, but the situation wasn't that bad. Looking at them now, it was indeed due to the aforementioned reasons that they were in a passive position. However, don't forget that cultivators could set up restrictions on the altar. Right now, they were setting up this matter. Once all the realm guarding formations were set up, they wouldn't need too many people to watch over them anymore. They could immediately attack again. At that time, they would definitely be able to catch these natives off guard. Thus, from his point of view, his side was only in the stage of accumulating power. If they did as Chang Hu said, it would seem that their method was wrong. Chang Hu was about to speak again when a Taoist surnamed Jia beside him coughed and interrupted him. He changed the topic and said, "Everyone, have you noticed that the descendants of the gods and monsters have become slightly different from before?" Hua Yingling continued, "That's right. I've noticed that the artifacts they use are called blood tools. These cannot compare to the talismans we have, but in recent years, they have become much stronger." Priest Jia hurriedly said, "Yes, yes." Hua Yingling said, "Actually, this is not strange. Following the merging of the 2 worlds in these 2 years, many demons have sought refuge with them. There are even cultivators who have been kidnapped. This generation knows many things. Even if there is no spiritual opportunity to use, it is not difficult to increase their power." At this moment, Chang Hu interrupted and said, "Therefore, the situation before us must not continue. The longer we delay, the more tyrannical the other side will become. We must quickly end this passive situation, or the consequences will be unimaginable." Hua Yingling smiled and said, "Friend Chang, you don't have to worry too much. Us cultivators and that aborigine all have our own strengths. Of course, our techniques can give him some inspiration, but overall strength cannot be increased in a few years, or even a few decades. If we can't do it, then they can't do it either." Gong Qi said, "Actually, we also have many blood descendants of deities and monsters who have sought refuge with us. In these 3 years, this generation has learned some tricks and knows how to use spiritual opportunity to cultivate. After a period of time, we can send them into battle, and then we will not be short of manpower." Many heavens of 1K galaxy were invaded by Zhang Yan's Qi dynamic, but there were still many aborigines. Previously, Zhang Chan and the others had their eyes on this generation and prepared to use them to fight against the enemy. Then, they would no longer be at a disadvantage in numbers. Chang Hu said disapprovingly, "After all, these people are not cultivators of our generation. They are not worthy of our trust. Today, they can rely on us, but who knows when they will betray us." Gong Qi and Mo Wan's expressions immediately turned ugly. Speaking of which, they were not cultivators, but Xian cultivators. Chang Hu's words seemed to be mocking them. Priest Jia realized that something was wrong and hurriedly tried to smooth things over. He said, "Zhenren Chang is a straightforward person. He is not targeting the 2 of you. I hope the 2 of you do not mind." Seeing that he apologized, Gong Chi and Mo1 did not say anything else. They both looked at Chang Hu coldly. Hua Yingling could see that the atmosphere was not harmonious. If they continued like this, they would not be able to come out of the discussion. After a few words, they ended the discussion. On the way back, Chang Hu said with dissatisfaction, "Fellow Taoist Jia, why did you stop me just now?" Priest Jia sighed. "Fellow Taoist just now, isn't it too much to say that? Even if Zhenren Chan's actions are biased, he can just remind us in private. Why did he have to say it in front of us? Isn't this hurting the relationship between the two families?" Chang Hu frowned. "I waited here to deal with those aborigines. How can I ignore right and wrong just because I want to take care of those few people? What should be is what should be. The reason why I advised you during the discussion is for the sake of the big picture." Taoist Jia let out a bitter laugh and said, "Just as you said, but in name, all of us should listen to Xianyuan Dao Lord's orders. It's not our place to instruct." Chang Hu said sternly, "You're wrong if you think that way. We wouldn't have a second opinion if those cultivators were able to show us the Xianyuan Dao Lord's order, but they're just a step ahead of us. Now that they're acting improperly, do you think I can't correct them?" The Jia Taoist looked at the other two Taoists who were traveling with them. Seeing that they were in agreement, he felt helpless and said, "You can do whatever you want, as long as you don't fail to give an explanation to the palace." In fact, he also knew that it was not only Chang Hu who had the same idea. The other cultivators of the Yuhuan heavens also had the same idea. This was because the Yuhuan heavens had the most cultivators who entered the Wanke star stream this time. Moreover, they did not belong to any of the other realms. In order to obtain more karma points, they were now fighting for dominance. Even if they did not think of it this way, they would unconsciously do it. On the other side, Li Chen and Lu En had spent a lot of effort searching. They were lucky to have found a realm that they could live in. However, the spiritual vigor was thin and there were no cultivators. Even the indigenous living beings were not strong, so they could not find anything. However, to the two of them, this realm was not without value. They had lived in the void for a long time, and the divine essence of the underworld they had decreased greatly. If they wanted to replenish it, they could only offer sacrifices to the Void Mother, and the living beings in this realm could be the sacrifice. However, when the altar was built and they began to offer sacrifices, the two of them realized that the Void Mother did not respond at all. Li Chen was a little uneasy and said, "Could it be that the Void Mother can't sense our sacrifice in this foreign realm?" Lu En calmly judged, "Otherwise, with the Void Mother's wily nature, how could she not sense it? It should be that the bloodline power of the living beings here is too weak, so the Void Mother doesn't like it." Li Chen heard this and felt that it made sense. He thought for a while and said, "Those from the foreign realms, as long as they are intelligent, they exist in places with abundant foreign powers. Since they can't be found here, we can only look for them in other realms." As the two of them were talking, suddenly, a person dressed in luxurious clothing ran over and kowtowed to the two of them, then pointed outside. Li Chen casually glanced at him. These aborigines were also human, so their intelligence was not low. They were worshipped as gods the moment they arrived, but now that it was proven that they could not even be considered sacrifices, he naturally lost interest in them. He casually asked, "What is he saying?" Lu En revealed a strange expression. He said, "He seems to have dug up some interesting things. It seems that some things in this world are not as simple as we think." Li Chen's spirit rose slightly. He said, "Oh, what is it?" Lu En said, "Let's go and take a look." The two of them immediately soared through the air to the place that the messenger mentioned and looked down from the sky. They saw that there was a mountain that had been split in half. However, there was a dark brilliance in the depths of the mountain, and they did not know what it was. Lu En said, "It seems that because of the construction of the sacrificial altar, the cutting of the mountain caused the thing at the bottom to be exposed." Li Chen nodded in agreement. He said, "Let me take a look at what it is." The two of them activated their bloodline power and looked down. In an instant, they saw through all the obstacles on the ground and looked into the depths of the ground. When they saw the thing, they could not help but reveal expressions of surprise. There was actually an incomparably large palace buried under the ground. The entire land under their feet just happened to cover it, or it could be said that it was supported by it. Luan looked a few more times and suddenly pointed to a place. He said, "Elderly, look over there." Li Chen saw that there was a huge hole that seemed to have been blasted out by some external force. He said, "Why don't we go in and take a look?" Luan also agreed. The two of them soared through the air and came to that place. Then they broke through the cover of the ground and went inside. Following that, they were shocked. What appeared in front of them was an incomparably large golden phoenix. It was lying there with its neck crossed. Its tail feathers covered its body, its wings were beautiful, and there were 3 legs hidden under its abdomen. Its body was so big that few of the gods and monsters they had seen could compare. What was even more shocking was that it was shimmering with spiritual light, and at this moment, it was still slightly swaying. Looking at it, it seemed to be alive. Li Chen said in shock, "What is this thing?" Lu An's expression was solemn. He said, "I'm afraid it's a god and monster from the foreign world." Li Chen thought about it and suddenly became excited. He said, "Elder Lu, if we sacrifice this god and monster to the Void Mother." Luan was also tempted. Such a large god and monster, the Void Mother would definitely accept it. Then, for a period of time, there would definitely be a lot of divine essence in the underworld. However, the two of them did not notice that as they spoke, the phoenix that was lying inside suddenly opened its eyes. Chapter 1850. Luan and Li Chen suddenly felt a great sense of danger and couldn't help but look over. They saw that the golden phoenix had opened its eyes at some point, and there was a faint ominous glint in them. The two of them were shocked. They didn't think that this monster would wake up at this time. They didn't know whether it felt the malice in their words or because it sensed that someone had intruded. After all, as the elders of the Western Great Palace, they had seen quite a number of void divine monsters. After their initial panic, they quickly regained their composure. Li Chen said fiercely, "This monster has just woken up and is still weak. Elder Lu, please help me take it down." Luan made a sound of acknowledgement. Both of them could sense that they might not be able to cause any harm to the golden phoenix with their current cultivation, so they immediately circulated the nether void divine essence. In just an instant, they transformed into 2 ferocious monsters. At the same time that their bloodline power increased explosively, their bodies were over 100 times larger than before. It wasn't just that, their cultivation levels had suddenly risen as well, and they'd instantly obtained the ability to fight the golden phoenix. But even so, the two of them still had grave expressions. There wasn't much dark space divine essence left, and there was no support behind them. At most, they could handle a battle. If they couldn't capture this monster this time, it was very likely that they would lose their lives here. The phoenix had been asleep for an unknown period of time. It had just woken up, and its body seemed to be stiff and unable to move. But this didn't mean that it didn't have the power to fight. Seeing the two of them change, the Zoisha crown on its head swayed, and a yellow light that was like a thin mist shone out. The source of Li Chen's ancestral bloodline was the monster Qi. It looked like a spider, and there were 8 open claws on its back. When it saw the yellow light coming, it wanted to avoid it, but its gaze lingered on it for a moment, causing its mind to be in a trance. When it turned, it was a beat too slow, and one of its claws grazed a spot, and that spot suddenly turned into soil and stone, gradually turning everything connected to it into this appearance. He was also shocked, and hurriedly severed the bloodline there. The spider leg immediately fell, and while it was still in midair, it turned into a clump of soil and sand. He was also shocked and said, "Elder Luan, you must be careful. Don't let that light hit you." Luan was much more cautious than him. When he saw the golden phoenix move, he immediately moved away. He had also seen the scene just now, so he was more vigilant in his heart. At this moment, the two of them wanted to end the battle as soon as possible. Not only did they not possess much nether space divine essence, but they were also afraid that if they fought for a long time, their minds would fall into madness and they would turn into real monsters, losing themselves. Lu En's chest and abdomen heaved up. The two eye sockets on the top of the door suddenly opened, releasing rays of brown light. Once it reached the outside world, everything in the world became blurry. He was a descendant of the god-fiend, Miju. According to legend, once this god-fiend was enraged, it could cause everything in the world to fall into chaos. Although he didn't have such an ability, he could throw the senses and emotions of those he fought into disorder. Moreover, as time passed, this ability of his would become stronger and stronger, and the range of its spread would become wider and wider. At that time, the minds of all living beings in this world would become extremely chaotic. Li Chen knew Lu En's ability very well. He knew that when the latter attacked, no matter how powerful his opponent was, they would be in a trance for a moment. So, he took the opportunity to attack. In an instant, countless crystal threads appeared in the air. One end was connected to him, and the other was connected to the phoenix. When the golden phoenix saw this, there seemed to be a hint of mockery in its eyes. It swept its tail feathers outwards, and the golden feathers on its body swayed. A dazzling light rose from it, and the crystal threads were cut off one by one. Li Chen's heart couldn't help but tremble. These crystals actually didn't have physical bodies, but were instead a reflection of the secret technique. Although both sides could see them, they didn't actually exist in the world. Logically speaking, it was impossible for something like severing them. But the reality was that such a scene had appeared before his eyes. This meant that the will of this phoenix had not only completely overshadowed his, it had even suppressed his own cognition. This meant that all his secret techniques were useless against this phoenix. The difference between them was too great, so great that there was almost no room for comparison. Li Chen immediately thought of retreating. To put it bluntly, the Western Hong Upper Palace had sent him here only because he was skilled in hiding and escaping, and even in breaking through realms and passing through space. He was not good at fighting head-on. Moreover, he had come to investigate the real situation in the alternate realm, not to fight with others. So, when he saw that something was wrong, retreating immediately was the best choice. He said loudly, "This monster is too powerful. We can't do anything. Elder Lu, why don't you retreat with me?" Lu En also realized that something was wrong. Usually, those who faced his enemies would immediately become slow and crazy after being invaded by his secret technique. How could this phoenix be completely unaffected? He immediately turned around and stood beside Li Chen. The next moment, the atmosphere seemed to distort, and the two of them disappeared into thin air. Seeing that they had left, the golden phoenix did not stop them, but there was a hint of mockery in its eyes. Li Chen did not simply leave the palace, but he directly broke through heaven and earth, leaping into the void. Seeing that everything was going smoothly, he could not help but breathe a sigh of relief. Even if the other party chased him here, they would not be able to fight in the void, but he did not dare to stay here for too long. He randomly found a void realm and escaped into it. But just now that they had escaped into it, the two of them were dumbfounded. They found that they had actually returned to their original place, as if they had not moved at all. The two of them looked at the phoenix in front of them, and their hearts could not help but tremble. This situation had already exceeded the scope of their understanding. Li Chen shouted and escaped again, then found another void realm to escape into, but the reality made him feel even more despair. He found that he had actually escaped back to his original place again. After failing to escape several times, he finally could not hold on any longer and no longer tried to escape. Not only because he knew that there was no hope of escaping, but also because if he continued like this, he would completely become a monster. He could only disperse the remaining underworld divine essence and obediently stood where he was without moving. When the phoenix saw that the two of them weren't moving, it didn't attack them. Instead, it flapped its wings and released a burst of golden light. When all of this disappeared, the phoenix revealed itself to be a 13 or 14-year-old youth. He wore a cloak made of golden feathers, and he had delicate features and was exceptionally handsome. He waved his sleeve, and the palace changed from dark and lonely to magnificent. Above the golden pillars on the steps, there were dazzling and magnificent wall decorations everywhere. He sat down on a jade platform in the center and said in a clear voice, "Where did you come from?" Li Chen did not dare to not answer. It was not difficult for such a powerful being to distinguish the truth from the lies. He replied, "We came from the Wanke star stream." The youth thought for a while and realized that he had never heard of this place. But this was a small matter for him. Usually, as long as he knew the name of a void realm and there was a creature standing in front of him, it would not be difficult for him to calculate the general situation of that place. Thus, he took out a spell and tried to find this place. But soon, he found that his senses were empty, and he could not find the correct direction at all. He raised his eyebrows subconsciously. In this situation, either the two of them were lying to him, or the powerful being in the 1K star stream was beyond his level. Looking at the current situation, the reason should be the latter. He looked at the two of them again and said, "Which realm is the 1K star stream? You should not be human. Could it be that you are a disciple of a celestial lord?" Li Chen said, "It is not in this world. For you, it is a foreign realm." Foreign realm? The youth was a little surprised. Just now, he knew that the two of them came from outside the void primordial sea and Bushutian. He said, "Then why did you wait until now? Who asked you to come here?" Li Chen replied, "We accidentally stumbled into this place." The youth came down and asked many questions in detail. Li Chen was limited by his level and was not clear about many things. He only knew that the void demon god invaded the 1K star stream and was fortunately stopped by the void mother. Now they were in a stalemate. In order to find out the truth behind the believers of the void demon god, they were sent out by the palace. The youth thought to himself, "I did not expect such a thing to happen in the outside world while I was in slumber. I wonder if Qingjue Mountain is still after me. But these two are of some use. I can let them check on the situation on my behalf. Even if they are exposed, I will not be implicated." In the 1K star stream, in the void gap, Sima Quan and Peng Xiang each stood on a broken corpse of a deity, feeling the senses of the demons coming from all directions. For the past few days, they had been working together to stop the deities. Because both of them had treasures with them, and their methods were strange and unpredictable, almost no one who was targeted by them could escape. Apart from them, many cultivators from the Yuhuan heavens were doing the same thing. It was just that they landed in different places and rarely met each other. Mortal metamorphosis cultivators could easily destroy the heavens and earth, and a single realm was too small for them. Fighting in the void was more suitable for them to display their power, and the inner realm could be left to cultivators at the elephant level to deal with. At this moment, Sima Quan's mind stirred, and he said, "Peng Shangzhen, according to our previous plan, in another half a year, the protective barrier formation below should be completed. At that time, we won't have to stay here to defend, and can once again kill our way out." Peng Xiang said, "There are countless deities and monsters. As long as the legendary Void Mother is not dead, there is no way to kill them. Even if we have twice the number of people, it will be useless. So we need to grasp the key points." Sima Quan nodded in agreement. Although the great forces that stood in the void were unimaginable, their foundation was still in the countless heavens. Among them, there were differences in strength and strength. Through their spies, they had found a few very powerful heavens. As long as they gathered their forces and attacked them, they would find a way to defend them, and they would be able to defeat the enemy. He said, "Before this, there needs to be someone in the middle. The Yuhuan heavens are acting on their own now, and it is difficult to unite them. This is not good for the overall situation." Peng Xiang said, "The Lord should have his own arrangements. I believe we will know in a few days." Chapter 1851. Mountain and Sea Realm, Jade Moon Sect's Main Altar, Minor World Paradise. Wei Zihong wore a black Taoist robe, his sleeves hanging loose. He stood in front of a wall painting, which depicted a divine dragon soaring through the clouds. This was the work of Patriarch Tai Heng, who had left it behind before his ascension. It had been placed in the same place as the secret tomes and magical devices of the Yaoyin clan, and had been specifically stated that only the sect leader could view them. In his opinion, there was no reason for the Patriarch to take this matter so seriously. There had to be some secret behind it. Furthermore, it was obvious that it would only be useful before entering the mortal shedding process. Interestingly, although the painting was named a divine dragon, it didn't actually look like a dragon. Within the clouds, horns, claws, and scales could be seen. However, despite its appearance, it gave off the feeling that it might leap out at any moment and unleash a torrent of thunder and rain. However, every time that feeling arose, it was accompanied by a desire to retreat. It was as if the dragon hadn't truly emerged, as if it had sensed some sort of danger and had retreated. Furthermore, because it wasn't willing to remain dormant, it paced back and forth within the clouds, looking for an opportunity. He couldn't help but think about how similar this situation was to his own. He had been practicing cultivation for a long time, and his vital energy was full. The root fruit was in place, and he only needed one more step to pluck the fruit and enter the upper realm. As a disciple of the Xian Essence sect, there were naturally secret magics regarding how to search for the root fruit. All he had to do was follow those instructions, and he would be able to take that final step effortlessly. And yet, he stood there in front of the gate, unmoving. That was because he had the feeling that something was off, as if there was some mysterious power preventing him from stepping out. After a moment of thought, he thought to himself, perhaps I should go ask my master for advice? However, he shook his head at the thought of this. As the sect master of a sect, he had a heavy responsibility. He wasn't completely isolated from the outside world. He knew that his master had returned a long time ago. Originally, he should have gone to pay his respects immediately, but he hoped that he could do this as a mortal metamorphosis cultivator. Although his master might be able to give him some pointers, everyone's path towards the Tao was unique. He was able to sense that this difficulty before him was both an obstacle and a fortuitous encounter at the same time. If he was able to rely on his own strength to see through this obstacle and not be pointed out by his seniors, then it would be even more beneficial to his future path towards the Tao. He looked at the map again and thought to himself, could it be that I borrowed the dragon's blood back then and that's why I'm dragging myself down? The mortal transformation realm meant shedding off one's mortal body and severing all past karma. Because everyone's cultivation technique and path to the Tao were different, the hurdles they had to face were different as well. However, there was one similarity. In order to accumulate enough magic power, one's chi dynamic had to be pure. His heart skipped a beat as he felt that he had found the crux of the problem. Back in the day, Patriarch Taiheng was born a devil W. He had the body of a demonic beast, but he cultivated the devil Tao. He had no hope of reaching the upper realm, so he stepped into the profound gate. In the end, he was able to enjoy the great Tao. However, it had to be noted that the dragon's tail had been cut off by itself in the end. Not only was there his demonic cultivation technique, but there were also many traces of his past. It could be said that he had turned around and started cultivating again. During his own cultivation process, he had fused the essence blood of the dragon monarch into his myriad origins life conversion technique, and it had indeed helped him a lot. However, it must be known that the dragon monarch was originally a mortal metamorphosis level creature, and his essence blood naturally contained its essence. Now that he wanted to start anew from it, it would perhaps become an obstacle. Could it be that he had to abandon everything? He immediately rejected this idea. Whether it was the cultivation technique or the blood essence, they had long been fused into his own cultivation. If he did that, it would be no different from starting all over again. Patriarch Taiheng was a demonic dragon and had a lifespan of tens of thousands of years. That was why he dared to do this. If he couldn't succeed this time, then he wouldn't have another chance in this lifetime. The only choice left was to reincarnate. He returned to the praying mat and sat down, then fell into deep thought. The light around him gradually dimmed as if everything had sunk into darkness. However, in the darkness, his eyes were incomparably bright. His cultivation was profound, and he had accumulated a lot. Moreover, he had been taught a top-notch secret technique. Now that he sat down, his beer was clear and his heart was clear. Everyone's path of cultivation was different. What did what you see on the wall have to do with me? Whether it was the dragon's blood or magic power, they were all part of me. If I want to abandon them, I can abandon them. If I want to use them, I can use them. It's up to me. Why should I be entangled here? This wasn't an obstacle to cultivation, but a mental barrier. As he thought of this, the first origin chi that had already been accumulated suddenly surged and rose to the center of his brows. The vertical eye on his forehead received this nourishment and suddenly opened. In an instant, the haze in the room was dispelled, and only a bright light shone out. And in the light, a chanting voice came out. The God's eye is opened in the mirror of chaos. The chi will breaks the dragon diagram. The body goes to the heavens to seek the mystic technique. From now on, the Tao is lonely. Wei Zihong slowly closed the God's eye on his forehead, and the light also gradually faded. He stood up and carefully looked at it. He felt that the past filth and the entanglement of karma were all gone. The dragon god's blood essence had completely disappeared, and there was no trace of it. However, he knew all the spells in it. If he wanted to use it, he would be able to use it with a little practice. He couldn't help but feel very carefree. My cultivation technique has been completed. It's time to pay my respects to my master. He strode out of the small world, and with a thought, thunder rumbled and a dragon's shadow appeared in the sky. At the same time, there was a bell ringing on the mountain peak. This movement immediately alerted the people in the sect. After a while, rays of light came from all directions and landed on the mountain peak. There were about 100 of them, and they were all the elders of the Yaoyin clan. When they saw that Wei Zihong had come out, they were all excited and happy. As they bowed, they all said, "Congratulations to Sect Master for your great cultivation technique." Wei Zihong nodded and said, "Now that I've completed my mortal transformation, I'll go to Qinghuan Palace to pay my respects to my master. However, I don't know when I'll be back. All of you stay here and cultivate well. If there are any problems, you can decide on your own." All the elders agreed in unison. Wei Zihong had never cared about the secular world of the sect, and they were already used to it. Moreover, their sect master was not a mortal transformation, but a disciple of Lord Xianyuan, so no one dared to provoke him. Wei Zihong's body turned into a ray of light and flew into the sky. With a change of qi, he landed in Xianyuan heaven. In a flash, he arrived in front of Qinghuan Palace. Jing Yu was already waiting for him there. He smiled and said, "Wei Shangzhen, Master knows you're coming and is waiting for you in the palace." Wei Zihong hurriedly returned the greeting, thanked Jing Yu, and went inside. When he arrived in the main hall, he saw Zhang Yan sitting high on the jade platform. Xian qi outside his body was like clouds, surging back and forth. His back contained the 5 essences, rotating endlessly. Wei Zihong's mind was slightly shaken. He hurriedly went forward and bowed, saying, "Disciple Wei Zihong pays his respects to my master." Zhang Yan smiled and said, "I'm very pleased that you were able to see through the obstacles in your heart and cast aside your past views." Wei Zihong said, "I was just lucky." Zhang Yan shook his head with a smile and said, "There's no such thing as luck when it comes to cultivating the Tao. You obtain this because your foundation is deep and your heart is upright. You've never gone astray, so there's no need to be too modest." Wei Zihong respectfully acknowledged. Zhang Yan said, "Now that you've entered the Qianxing calendar of the human Tao, you all have karma that needs to be severed. Otherwise, even if you've achieved something under the external calamity, it will be reduced to nothing. However, your tribulation is still far away. When it comes, I'll explain it to you. It's just that I'm currently fighting against a mighty figure, and our chi dynamics are clashing. It's difficult to determine the winner and loser for the time being. Therefore, I've mobilized all the cultivators to occupy the universe. Now that you've come out of seclusion, I'll let you go." Wei Zihong bowed and said, "Disciple obeys." Zhang Yan flicked his finger, and a jade scroll flew out. He then said, "Master's instructions are all in this scroll. You can do as I say. There are several other techniques here that can help you stabilize your cultivation. You've just accomplished something, so you can cultivate in the palace for a period of time before you move out again." Wei Zihong took it and said, "Disciple obeys." He retreated from the hall and Jing Yu came to greet him and brought him to the side hall for the night. For more than 30 days, he stayed here to consolidate his cultivation. When he felt that he was done, he went to the hall to bid farewell to Zhang Yan. Zhang Yan said a few words to him and let him out. Wei Zihong went outside and thought, "Master ordered me to take charge of the situation. However, I've become ordinary, and those of the same generation as Yu Huan are all stronger than me. I'm afraid it'll be hard to convince the masses." As the sect leader of a sect, he naturally knew what was at stake here. Although he had brought his teacher's orders with him, and no one dared to disobey him, if he didn't have the means to suppress the crowd and cause them to be unconvinced, then the result of doing the same thing could be as different as heaven and earth. Just as he was thinking, he saw a large koan floating above the sea of clouds. He didn't think too much and bowed, saying, "So it's Ing Jinren." Hearing him call him that, Ingui shook his head and wagged his tail, looking very happy. He said in a soft voice, "Wei Jinren, the Supreme Holiness wants me to go with you." Wei Zihong's heart moved and he suddenly came to a realization. He nodded and thought, "Looks like Master has already made arrangements." He laughed and jumped onto Ingui's back, saying, "Ing Jinren, we'll set off now." Ingui's figure blurred, and in just a moment, he had already broken through heaven and earth and arrived outside the Law Chief Heaven. Wei Zihong looked around and said, "Is this the 1K star stream?" He felt that this place was completely different from the Void Essence Sea. Not only was there a difference between the past and the future, but the surrounding barriers were also very fragile, as if they could break into a certain world with just a light bump. There were countless gods and monsters in the void crack. Their sudden appearance attracted many, but they sensed the power of the large koan from afar and didn't dare to go forward. At this moment, a dim light flashed, and a blurry figure appeared nearby. Wei Zihong looked over and raised his hand in greeting, saying, "So it's Sect Master Sima. Greetings." Sima Quan returned the greeting and said, "Not long ago, I received a letter from the Supreme Holiness saying that Sect Master Wei will be coming soon. Fellow Taoists and I have been waiting for a long time." Wei Zihong's expression turned solemn, and he said, "This time, I'm here on Master's orders to take charge of the situation. It's just that I've just arrived here and there are still many things I don't understand. I'll need Sect Master Sima and fellow Taoists to help me." Sima Quan said politely, "Of course. We've already set up a place to stay in the void. Please follow me, Sect Master Wei." Chapter 1852. Within the rift in the void was a city of 9 pillars palace, so large that it was almost as large as a continent in the realm. The original city had been moved here from the mountain and sea realm by Taoist cultivators from the 9 continents. After Yu Huan's arrival, the cultivators from both sides decided to use the city as a foundation to build up a stable base of operations. Eventually, they merged the city together, which was how it had come to be. The palace had been set up by the cultivators inside and outside of it. There were all sorts of defensive formations, and there was a spirit pond in the center to maintain the flow of energy. Even in a place where there was no spiritual opportunity, it could still exist. When Wei Zihong arrived with Sima Quan, he saw thousands of devouring dragons roaming around, chasing and devouring the void godlings that appeared from time to time. In addition, there were all sorts of strange dragon species working together with them. He recognized that these were demonic dragons that had been raised in Dan Long's stomach. As long as there was blood and flesh to feed them, they would be able to give birth to more. Although their power was average, there was no end to their numbers. It was perfect to use them here. He entered the palace and first met with Peng Xiong. When the two of them arrived at the main hall, he asked about the current situation. Sima Quan explained everything to him in detail, then said, "There are still many fellow Taoist Yu Huan outside, but with the killing of the godlings and their blood descendants everywhere, we can't gather them all. If Sect Master Wei has anything to say, I can tell you." Wei Zihong said, "There's no rush. We'll talk about it later. I'm sure the two of you are very clear about the current situation. Do you have any suggestions?" Even if there was no one to lead them, the cultivators had managed to deal with it. If he forcefully gave orders, it would not be appropriate, as it might disrupt the arrangements. Sima Quan and Peng Xiang had been here for a long time, so they must have a more mature opinion. Sima Quan pondered for a moment, then said, "Since Sect Master Wei has asked, I'll explain it clearly. The godlings in the void are endless, and we can't keep fighting like this. We can only deal a heavy blow to them if we attack their vitals." With a wave of his sleeve, a circular jade platform that was only half a foot tall slowly rose from the pool below. Then, with a burst of splendor, it spread out, and there were countless bright stars on it. It was obvious that it was constantly rotating. He pointed and said, "This is the geomancy map of 1K star. All the worlds that I know of are within it." He pointed, and the stars dimmed, leaving only one spot that was exceptionally bright. According to the information we've gathered, there are 3 worlds in the 1K star stream that are the most vast. We've only come into contact with one of them, which is the Luo Zhu sky. The forces there are also very large. The Eternal Sky sect, which is known as the most powerful sect in the 1K star stream, is stationed here. It's rumored that even some of the monsters that wander through the void cracks will stay here. Peng Xiang said, "We suspect that the divine essence of nether space that's required for their cultivation might exist here, and that's why so many fiend gods were attracted here." Wei Zihong looked over and said, "Have the 2 of you investigated this place?" Sima Quan said, "We've been patrolling outside, but it's very difficult to go deep. Moreover, the situation here is very complicated. What we've seen now is only a part of it, and not the whole picture. I'm afraid that the power of the fiend gods hidden here is beyond our imagination." Peng Xiang said, "In fact, the more of them, the better. Now, they can retreat and advance whenever they want. Even if we can intercept and kill them, we can only deal with them passively. If we can get rid of the fiend gods and their descendants here, not only will we be able to greatly reduce the pressure we face, our future progress will be much smoother." Wei Zihong looked at the geomancy map for a while, and suddenly, a world caught his attention. He pointed and said, "Where is this?" Sima Quan looked over, and he pondered for a while before saying, "There are true dragons in this world. The sect that I destroyed earlier was the true dragon's descendant. It's rumored that this place is where the true dragons live, and they all worship an old dragon as their lord." Wei Zihong's heart moved, and he thought for a while before saying, "Have we contacted them before?" Sima Quan said, "We haven't. The main thing is that our first priority was to defend the dozen or so worlds that we conquered. In order to deal with the many fiend gods, we couldn't spare any manpower to go elsewhere." Wei Zihong stared at it for a while before saying, "From what everyone said, the source of the fiend gods are the Void Mother, but the true dragons and fiend gods are different, and they are not the same kind of people. Maybe I can try to rope them in." Sima Quan said, "Sect leader Wei intends to communicate with them?" Wei Zihong said with certainty, "Yes." Sima Quan reminded, "We are now under the protection of the Venerable One's Qi dynamic, so we are safe. That place is far from here, and if we go there rashly, we might be discovered by that almighty being." Wei Zihong smiled and said, "It's fine, I have a way to avoid it." Peng Xiang said, "The Yuhuan Heavens page see Heavenly Lord Ao Shao is a true dragon. Since sect leader Wei wants to do this, do you want to invite him over?" Wei Zihong thought for a while and said, "There's no need. This Heavenly Lord Ao Shao is an Enlightenment Realm cultivator, and his cultivation is very high. If he goes, he might attract the attention of that almighty being, and that would be inappropriate." Sima Quan said, "Then who does sect leader Wei want to send?" Wei Zihong said in a deep voice, "I will go there personally." Sima Quan said, "If that's the case, Spiritual Master Peng and I will escort sect leader Wei there." Wei Zihong waved his hand and said, "There's no need for that. We are already short of manpower here, so I need the 2 of you to help me stabilize the situation. Spiritual Master Ing and I will go there." Sima Quan said, "Isn't it too dangerous for sect leader Wei to go there personally?" Wei Zihong smiled and said, "With the protective item given by my teacher, even if there is danger, it won't be difficult to avoid it. There's no need to persuade the 2 of you, I must do this." He felt that what he lacked the most now was prestige. Although he had Ingue's help, it was not enough. Only by making a move with enough weight would he be able to gain the trust of others. If he could convince the dragon god to come to his side, he would undoubtedly be able to gain a firm foothold. Sima Quan saw that he had made up his mind and did not try to persuade him anymore. He said, "Sect leader Wei, you must be careful. If things don't work out, please come back as soon as possible. If they are not willing to join me, I will just destroy them in the future." Wei Zihong nodded and said, "This matter has been decided long ago. I will go there now." After coming to an agreement with the two of them, he turned around and went to the flying platform outside. He summoned Ingue and said, "Spiritual Master Ing, I'll have to trouble you to bring me to a place later." Ingue had come out with great difficulty, so he did not like to stay in one place. Knowing that he was going to another place so soon, he was overjoyed and asked happily, "Where is Spiritual Master Wei going?" Wei Zihong sat on his back and communicated with his divine will. The latter immediately understood, and with a shake of its body, it tore through the air and fled. Seeing this, Wei Zihong immediately took out a talisman and cast it in the air. In an instant, a spiritual light enveloped him and Ingue. This was something Zhang Yan had given him before he left. If the Almighty behind him made a move against him, he could immediately use this to escape with Ingue. However, the possibility of this was actually very small. To that Almighty, Wei Zihong could be said to be insignificant. Moreover, almost all of his power was constantly colliding with Zhang Yan's transcendence energy. As long as a Taoist cultivator's cultivation did not exceed a certain limit, it would be difficult to attract the Almighty's attention. Under the continuous teleportation of the giant Kuan, Wei Zihong only felt that everything around him had retreated. It was as if there was nothing else in the world except for himself. Even his thoughts seemed to have come to a halt. After an unknown amount of time, his body suddenly trembled and he found himself in an unfamiliar place. He looked ahead and saw that there was an Earth star there. It was a blue crystal bead that was wrapped in a mass of mist. It was gorgeous and beautiful, almost intoxicating to the point that one's mind was intoxicated by it. Comparing it to the map, he immediately knew that this was the residence of the true dragon. However, to show that he had no hostility, he asked Ingue to slowly approach it. Along the way, he saw countless strange gods and monsters outside the Earth star. Some were not worth mentioning, but some made him feel that he needed to be careful. However, with Ingue here, these people obviously did not dare to approach. Instead, they seemed to be frightened and kept far away. When he was about to reach that place, suddenly there was a flash of light in the Earth star. Then, a dragon-shaped mist flew up and in the blink of an eye, it turned into a charming woman. However, her eyes were cold and full of power. She coldly shouted, "Who has come to my dragon world?" Wei Zihong bowed and said, "I am Wei Zihong, disciple of Lord Xinyuan. I have specially come to see the dragon god." "Lord Xinyuan?" The woman could not help but frown. She did not understand what Lord Xinyuan meant, but she clearly felt that Wei Zihong's background was not simple. She glanced at Ingue and said, "You don't seem to be from my 1K galaxy?" Wei Zihong calmly admitted, "Yes, I came from the outer realms." The woman was not very surprised and said, "Then why have you come to my place?" Wei Zihong looked at her and said, "Can you allow me to talk to the dragon god?" The woman's tone became cold and said, "You can tell me what you want. There is no need to disturb the dragon god." Wei Zihong thought for a while and shook his sleeve. A talisman flew out. The woman reached out and caught it. When she opened it, her expression changed slightly. She said resolutely, "Please go back. The dragon world will not get involved in the battle between the two worlds." Wei Zihong said meaningfully, "The battle between the two worlds involves many powerful people. All living beings are involved. Who can stay out of it?" He could feel that the other party was speaking the truth. Otherwise, he would not be so calm after revealing his background. However, the calmer it was, the more it showed the importance of the dragon world. Otherwise, why would the strange sects of 1K Galaxy allow him to roam freely outside? It was probably because there was no way to take him down that they could only ignore him. Even if it was to weaken the power of 1K Galaxy, He had to find a way to win him over. The woman was a little displeased when she heard his words. At the same time, she said with a hint of pride, "The dragon world has made an agreement with the Void Mother since the beginning of the world. I will not become a monster, nor will I care about the affairs of the world. The Void Mother will also protect my glory. Even if the world outside is turned upside down, what does it have to do with me?" Wei Zihong smiled and looked at her. He said, "Forgive me for being blunt. The battle between the two worlds today is a battle between my master, Shenyuan Dao Lord, and the 1K Galaxy's creator. When the time comes, even the Void Mother will not be able to protect you, let alone a small place like the Dragon World." Chapter 1853. Hearing Wei Zihong's words, the woman's breathing stagnated. She didn't want to believe him, but she felt an inexplicable sense of fear in her heart. She wanted to be tough to the end, but she felt a little timid. After a moment of hesitation, she said, "Please wait for a moment." Wei Zihong nodded. "Okay, I'll wait here." The woman bent her knees slightly, then turned around and transformed into a dragon-shaped cloud, returning to the Earth Star. Wei Zihong waited outside for half a month. On this day, the fog in front of him suddenly surged, and the woman turned around again. This time, she spoke politely for a long time. "Thank you for waiting." Wei Zihong said, "It's all right. I believe you've already made your decision." The woman raised her hand and gently pushed the letter back. She said in a low voice, "We, the Dragon Realm, cannot violate the ancestral rules, but we can promise that we will not help the Void Mother this time. Please forgive us." Seeing this, Wei Zihong knew that the Dragon Realm still wanted to maintain a transcendent status, and they didn't even want to have any contact with him. Otherwise, they could have rejected her verbally and secretly left the letter. This way, he could understand the meaning of the letter, and there would be room for communication in the future. But now that they were so ruthless, there was nothing to say. As the saying went, not helping the Void Mother was no different from how it was before. However, his expression was the same as just now, without a trace of anger. He smiled and nodded. "If that's the case, then I won't force you. I'll take my leave now." Seeing that he didn't pester her, the woman was a little surprised, but she also breathed a sigh of relief. She bent her knees slightly and said, "If that's the case, it's not convenient for you to stay here any longer. I'll take my leave now." Wei Zihong shook his head in his heart. He took the initiative to come here today, saying that he was asking for help from the Dragon Realm, but in fact, he was also giving them a chance. What he said just now was not a threat, but a fact. The almighty being in front of him was no match for his master, and he was struggling at death's door, hoping to delay the confrontation until the next era. But how could his master give him such a chance? He believed that it would not be long before this matter was completely resolved, and based on the attitude of the Dragon Realm, they would definitely be eliminated when the time came. He cupped his fists and communicated with Ingui with his thoughts. Then he left the place. However, after leaving the Earth Star, he didn't leave the Dragon Realm. Instead, he found a random desolate star and stopped. He looked in a certain direction and said, "You can come out now." Just now, he could feel a hidden aura nearby. Anyone who could appear here, even if they were not from the Dragon Realm, had to be closely related to the Dragon Realm. As soon as his voice fell, a bolt of lightning came and went, faintly revealing the shape of a dragon. Then, it suddenly gathered and a middle-aged man with a high hat and a wide belt appeared. His appearance was somewhat similar to that of the woman. He came up and smiled, cupped his hands, and said, "Shangzhen greetings." It was not difficult for Wei Zihong to discern that the other party was a real dragon from the changes in his qi dynamic. However, hearing such a form of address, he knew that this person was not simple. At the very least, he was not a person who was isolated from the outside world. He might have even secretly come into contact with cultivators. He raised his hand and bowed, saying, "May I ask who you are?" The middle-aged man said, "I am Qi Xiaolan. The reigning dragon god is my brother." Wei Zihong said, "So it's Chief Qi." Qi Xiaolan said in a self-deprecating manner, "I don't deserve such a title." My brother has long chased me out of the dragon realm. Now, I'm just a lonely wandering ghost." There seemed to be a lot of resentment in his words. Wei Zihong immediately understood. No wonder this person would take the initiative to look for him. So there was a reason behind it. Maybe he wanted to use his power to do something. However, he was not afraid that the other party had a purpose. On the contrary, this was the best, because what the other party lacked was exactly what Wei Zihong could give. Since the other party took the initiative to look for him, then according to the normal way of doing things, Wei Zihong should hold back a little and wait for the other party to reveal the purpose of his visit. However, he had the absolute advantage, so there was no need for him to use words. He said directly, "May I know the reason why the dragon god chased you away?" Qi Xiaolan said bitterly, "The dragon realm has existed since the beginning of the world. Our ancestors once made a promise with the Void Mother to not step beyond the dragon realm and not involve ourselves in worldly affairs. Although this allowed our race to survive until today, it also cut off the road to prosperity. It's fine for the younger generation, but for us, it's like a prison. I once suggested to my brother to find a way to break the restraints, but he didn't listen to me. Instead, he blamed me for bringing disaster to the clan and used this as an excuse to chase me out." Wei Zihong knew in his heart that what this person did was definitely not as simple as he said. However, these were just small details. He said, "Then does Qi Xiaolan want to take back the position of dragon god?" This was indeed the reason why Qi Xiaolan came to look for Wei Zihong this time. He wanted to agree immediately, but for some reason he hesitated when the matter came to this. Seeing his hesitation, Wei Zihong smiled and didn't continue this topic. Instead, he asked, "Qi Xiaolan, who do you think will win this battle between the two worlds?" Qi Xiaolan's eyes flickered. From what Wei Zihong had said just now, the latter's master was the Xianyuan High Lord. He guessed that this person should be the legendary Void Demon God. He could feel that at least half of the Myriad K star stream was currently enveloped by this demon god Weili. Since the two worlds collided, the other side had been constantly advancing, while the Myriad K star stream was constantly retreating. It was obvious who was stronger and who was weaker. It was also based on this judgment that he came to look for Wei Zihong. However, he couldn't say it like this, or else he would appear to be worthless. After thinking for a while, he said seriously, "I've seen all the things that your side has done since you entered the world. Your strength is not bad, but compared to the Myriad K star stream, it's still lacking." Wei Zihong waved his hand and said, "Qi Xiaolan, you don't have to cover for me. With my current strength, it's true that our side is far inferior to the Myriad K star stream, but the situation will eventually change, and it won't take long." Qi Xiaolan's heart skipped a beat. Although Wei Zihong didn't say anything specific, it wasn't hard for him to guess that something big was about to happen. This was also in line with his expectations. As long as his elder brother and the Void Mother were still alive, he would never be able to make a comeback. However, this was a great opportunity for him to achieve his goal with the help of the demon god's followers. Even if he thought about the worst and ended up failing, he could just retreat to the other side. His days would be much better than before. He slowly bowed and said solemnly, "If that's the case, if your side can help me regain the position of Dragon Monarch, I will also serve you." Wei Zihong nodded and lifted him up with his arcane energy. He said, "I can promise that as long as you are willing to help me, I can also help you regain the position of Dragon Monarch." Qi Xiaolan was overjoyed when he heard this. Even his spirit was lifted a lot. Wei Zihong asked, "I have something to ask you. What's the situation in the dragon realm now?" Qi Xiaolan pondered for a while and said, "Only the Dragon Monarch knows the true situation in the dragon realm. What I know is only the surface. There are about 20 elders who have lived for more than 10,000 years and hundreds of thousands of people." At this point, he suddenly revealed a look of resentment. "Back then, we made an agreement with the Void Mother, but it wasn't like we didn't pay any price. Normally, our people are favored by the heavens and earth. As long as we continuously train and never slack off, we will be able to enjoy eternal life once we succeed. However, after the agreement, this ability was taken away. Until now, no one in our race has lived for more than 1,000,000 years. Wei Zihong came to a realization. No wonder Qi Xiaolan was so enthusiastic. There was another reason behind it. He said, "How many people can you mobilize?" Qi Xiaolan said with a hint of pride, "I won't hide it from you. Although I was driven out, there are many people in the clan who support me. It seems that half of the elders are secretly in contact with me, and there is no lack of people who admire me." Wei Zihong was a little surprised. He said, "If that's the case, isn't your brother quite unpopular?" Qi Xiaolan said disdainfully, "If he didn't have the ancestral blood letter, which is equivalent to holding the lifeline of the people other than some of the direct descendants, who would listen to him?" Wei Zihong secretly nodded. Although Qi Xiaolan did not explain in detail, the blood letter must be the key. He asked again, "What kind of person is your brother?" Qi Xiaolan's face showed disdain. He said, "It's funny. Every day my brother takes notes. Every item is about how to prosper the clan and how to break through the great Tao. But there is never a single thing that is done. Every time he comes out of meditation, he laments that the past is wasted and that he must work hard from now on. But every time the people under him think that he is going to pull himself together, there is no more. To say that he is good at planning but not decisive, and that he has great ambition but little talent is overestimating him. When I was chased out, it was my late uncle who gave the order on his behalf. Otherwise, he might not have been able to make the decision." Wei Zihong was amused. Qi Xiaolan was not at all polite when it came to criticizing his brother. But if this dragon god was really like this, it would be more convenient for him. He said, "Brother Qi, have you ever thought that your brother chased you out not to punish you, but to leave a way out for the dragon realm?" Qi Xiaolan was startled. He thought for a while and then laughed coldly. "That might be possible. But even if it is true, it is not something that my useless brother could have thought of. It is most likely my father's plan." At this point, he no longer cared about the real reason why he was chased out. He only knew that after he was chased out, they were two different people. At this point, he raised his head and said, "Just now, Qi Jiang has gone back to report that Shangzhen has been waiting for half a month. If you want to discuss something like this, how long would it take? My brother did this on purpose. If Shangzhen was unlucky enough to be discovered by the Void Mother, then it would have nothing to do with him. But when he saw that Shangzhen was safe and sound, he knew that the Dragon Realm was not to be trifled with, so he had no choice but to reject. To put it bluntly, he does not want to offend the Void Mother, but he is also afraid that the Dragon Realm will cause trouble for him." Wei Zihong pondered for a while before saying, "This is a serious matter, and it requires a comprehensive plan. Why don't you follow me back and discuss this matter with the others? We can also sign a contract at the same time." Qi Xiaolan thought about the possibility of meeting the legendary Void Demon God. He hesitated for a while, then gritted his teeth and agreed. "All right, I will go with Shangzhen." Wei Zihong smiled. "This trip will not take up too much of your time." He looked at the dragon realm that was shrouded in fog. "When you return, it will be a different scene." Chapter 1854. Zhang Yan stared at the river of karma of the heavenly secrets. Everything in the world, past and future, was reflected in it. As long as it was properly guided through various arrangements, he could climb up to the general trend and borrow its power. However, the number of heavenly secrets changed at any time, even he could not calculate everything. Sometimes, because the changes of karma were complicated, even if he could calculate it, it did not mean that he could completely control it. For example, the karma of the heavenly secrets leading to the next era was in a chaotic fog. Fortunately, now that he was fighting against the person behind it, there were many changes that were within his expectations. For example, he previously sent Wei Zihong to take charge of the overall situation because it was the fastest way to advance this matter. If everything went smoothly, he could even get rid of the person behind it in a few years. Of course, this referred to the situation where there were no additional variables, but in reality, even the slightest of twists and turns could cause some unpredictable changes. However, as long as he kept a close eye on the general trend, he would not deviate from the direction. At this moment, Seeing the karma of the dragon realm leaping up, he thought for a moment, and with a thought, a talisman book appeared out of thin air. Then, with a flash of spiritual light, it flew down to the lower realm. After doing this, just as he was about to return to continue wasting the Tai golden bead, he suddenly found a slight change in the river of heavenly secrets. Although it was not eye-catching, he still noticed it. Looking down, the image of a three-legged golden swan appeared in front of him. So it's the karma of the past. It was just a demon bird. Even if it was born magical, it was still quite powerful in the void primordial sea. However, it wasn't worthy of his attention. Even though it had escaped, its karma hadn't disappeared. Once the killing tribulation arrived, it would naturally perish. He was about to ignore this matter, but at this moment, he found that something was wrong. When he looked again, he found that the karma of the demon bird seemed to have appeared just now, but the karma behind it had been buried for a long time. However, he could not find any trace of it in the past. It seemed very abrupt, as if it had been moved in by force. His eyes flickered. This method was not simple. In the modern world, apart from the person behind it, no one else could do it. However, there was another question. After he had reached the third level of the true yang stage, the other party's methods could no longer be hidden in front of him. For example, the act of luring the 5 supreme experts to the myriad K star stream could not be hidden from him. Therefore, the real reason for this was that the other party knew of some mysterious heavenly secrets that he was unable to fathom at the moment, and then clung onto this power to make a move. That was why there was such a situation in front of him. His gaze deepened slightly. It seemed that he couldn't be careless in the slightest before the final outcome was decided, and he couldn't ignore any variables. In the end, he still had to take down this person. Only then would he be able to cut off all disturbances and dispel the fog. In the myriad K star stream, Wei Zihong had Ingre's help, so he and Qi Xiaolan had no trouble on their way back to Jiutai Palace City. After Qi Xiaolan signed the contract, he invited Sima Quan and Peng Xiang over and told them about his plans for the Dragon Realm. Sima Quan asked, "Sect leader Wei, how do you plan to take down this place?" Wei Zihong said, "I have already discussed with fellow Qi. This time, there is no need to attack by force. We only need to take down the Dragon God." Sima Quan said, "Fellow Qi, with the Dragon God gone, will you be able to stabilize the situation?" Qi Xiaolan hurriedly said, "Everyone, please be at ease. Although my elder brother expelled me, I can still secretly enter the Dragon Realm. Back then, my elder brother had my uncle's assistance, so everything inside and outside was in order. After my uncle passed, everything was in chaos. As long as I ascend to the throne and obtain the ancestral bloodletter executor, no one will dare to oppose me." Peng Xiang was only concerned about the most important question. He said, "I wonder how strong this dragon god is?" Qi Xiaolan revealed a look of disdain and said, "My elder brother is the direct descendant of the dragon ancestor. Even if he doesn't cultivate much, his strength is not bad. He can only be compared to the descendants of gods and monsters who cultivate the divine essence of the underworld." It was not Sima Quan and Peng Xiang's first time here, so they could understand what he meant. In this case, this dragon god should be at the mortal metamorphosis level, and around the first stage. He was not much different from the elders of the distant star upper palace. However, it sounded like the dragon realm was very powerful. For someone with such strength to be able to sit firmly on the throne of the dragon god was really unbelievable. Wei Zihong saw that they were doubtful, so he said, "Everyone, fellow Qi once told me that the reason why his elder brother could become the dragon monarch was because of his pure bloodline. He is a direct descendant of the dragon ancestor, and he holds the blood letter, not because he is the strongest." Qi Xiaolan added, "It is also because of this reason that many of the elders are not satisfied with my elder brother. In addition, after so many years, some of the clansmen want to not be trapped in the dragon realm anymore. Therefore, everyone has a change of heart. Now is the time to take advantage of the situation." Sima Quan said, "Even so, we have to think about it at length, especially when we need someone to hide the heavenly secrets. If it was really just to deal with the dragon god alone, it was not difficult. They could just invite a powerful talisman and it would be useless no matter how high one's cultivation was. However, such people usually had a sense of danger. If they were prepared in advance, it would be hard to say. Wei Zihong nodded in agreement and said, "I will try to invite a fellow Taoist with profound Taoist skills to do this." Not long after he said that, a disciple came up to the hall to report, "A Taoist has arrived outside the hall, saying that he is here with the Lord's decree." Wei Zihong heard and said, "Quickly invite him in." After a while, a young Taoist came up to the hall. He bowed and said, "He Xianin greets fellow Taoists." Wei Zihong's expression turned solemn, and he solemnly returned the greeting. "So it is Heaven Lord He. Greetings." Sima Quan and Peng Xiang also solemnly bowed. Qi Zhaolan, however, revealed a shocked expression. He realized that this person standing in front of him was illusory. He had only felt such a feeling from the few elders. He Xianin said, "This time, I am here to help Sect Leader Wei under the Lord's order. If Sect Leader Wei has any arrangements, please let me know." Wei Zihong's expression brightened. He said, "Heaven Lord He, you came at the right time. I have something to ask of you." He originally had a plan for the Dragon Realm, but if he wanted to succeed, he still needed to invite a few people. He might even have to go through some trouble. Now that He Xianin was here, he could save a lot of effort. He came down and told him about the Dragon Realm, and He Xianin immediately understood his intention. He said, "In that case, as long as I snatch the blood letter and hand it over to Taoist Qi, it will be fine." Wei Zihong said, "Exactly." He Xianin said, "If that's the case, I will accept it." Wei Zihong solemnly bowed again. He said, "Heaven Lord He, then I will have to ask you to go on this trip. I wonder if Heaven Lord He has a way to protect yourself?" He was the person in charge, so he would not personally participate in the battle. Moreover, with the situation in the Dragon Realm, a cultivator from Duju would be enough. He Xianin bowed and said, "Thank you for your concern, Sect Leader Wei. I came with the talisman given by the Lord, and I also have a treasure for escaping. It will not be difficult for me to cover my tracks in a short period of time." When he finished, he turned to look at Qi Zhaolan. He said, "Taoist Qi, let us set off now." Qi Zhaolan originally thought that such a big matter would need to be planned slowly, and it would not be strange for it to drag on for tens or hundreds of years. However, he did not expect to make a move so soon. He was surprised and excited at the same time. His elder brother definitely did not expect the cultivators to act so quickly. The messenger had just now left, and in the blink of an eye, they came to fight. He hurriedly said, all right. Thank you, Heaven Lord He." At this moment, Wei Zihong gave an order, and a disciple came forward to lead the two out. Then, the two disappeared into the void. Next, it was to wait for the result. He turned around and looked at the map. After Qi Zhaolan arrived, he revealed more secrets of the Wanke star stream. From the looks of it, the truly powerful ones in this heavenly region were the celestial monsters that were born in the void. Although some of the descendants of the celestial monsters had opened up another path of Tao, and their battle abilities were not inferior to the celestial monsters that had existed since ancient times, they were few in number. For example, the sect leader of Chang Tian sect was one of them. It was rumored that he had already reached the state of immeasurable dark space. Judging from his past, he was probably not any weaker than a cultivator from the second or third level of Duju. He might even have some hidden tricks up his sleeves. Not only that, he had also enslaved many powerful celestial monsters that he had captured. Therefore, in order to take down Luo Zhu Tian and wipe out the forces of this sect, they had to gather a few Duju cultivators. If everything went smoothly, when the Dragon Realm submitted to them, this matter could be put on the agenda. In the Void's primordial sea, after the young man transformed from the Golden Phoenix woke up from his slumber, he detained the two people from the Wanke star stream. Then, with the help of an old Tong Tiange, he drove the palace to a secret place in the Golden Phoenix sect and hid there. Because he was afraid of his old rival, Qingzhua Shan, he originally planned to slowly find a way to understand the current situation. However, one day when he went to the secret training room, he was surprised to find a letter on the table. He unconsciously became vigilant. He was the only one who came to this place, and he was sure that there was no such thing during his slumber. After reading for a while, he went forward and picked it up. When he opened it, he could not help but be shocked. The letter detailed all the changes that had happened since his slumber, and stated that he was now a murderer. Although he had avoided it in the past, the karma had accumulated. If he did not find a way to get rid of it, it would be difficult for him to escape death. The only way to avoid it was to do one thing. As he read the letter, his heart was filled with bewilderment. To be able to silently place it here and point out so many things, could it have been done by the celestial venerables? Just as he was about to read it again, he suddenly discovered that his hands were empty. Where was the letter? He couldn't help but feel a wave of horror. At this moment, he faintly realized that there might be some other reason behind his awakening this time that seemed to be so coincidental. But when he thought of the words in the letter, his expression became indeterminate. After a long time, he gritted his teeth and thought to himself, "I don't have a choice now. Looks like I can only act according to this. If I'm able to succeed, then perhaps I can eliminate the karma and escape this calamity." Chapter 1855. In the blink of an eye, more than 100 days had passed. Wei Zihong had been trying to find out the specific situation in Luo Zhu Sky. Regardless of whether the matter with the Dragon Realm was successful or not, it would be his next target. Sima Quan and Peng Xiang continuously sent devils to roam around the outer world, and controlled many puppets to enter the inner world to investigate. After a long time, they continued to sneak into the world and sent back some news. Because the information was mixed, they could not confirm whether it was true or not. However, with the information revealed by Qi Xiaolan, they were able to figure out some things. Peng Xiang said, "If Qi Xiaolan can successfully control the Dragon Realm, there is no need to submit immediately. Perhaps you can continue investigating in Luo Zhu Sky." Sima Quan shook his head and said, "Although it is a safe plan, this will waste too much time." Wei Zihong also thought so. If they wanted to slowly advance, then there was no need for them at all. Just his teacher alone would be enough to overwhelm the other party. It was just that he didn't want to drag things out for too long and cause some changes, so he ordered them to come. So, the faster they progressed, the better. He said, "What we know about Luo Zhu Tian is only superficial. No matter how hard Qi Xiaolan tries to investigate, he will not be able to find out anything. When the time comes, there is no need for us to waste our efforts. It would be inappropriate if our identities are exposed." Peng Xiang said, "According to what Qi Xiaolan said, no one has ever asked about the change of ruler in the Dragon Realm. However, I think that is not the case. Such an important matter will most likely be watched." Sima Quan's eyes turned cold and said, "Does Peng Xiang really think that Qi Xiaolan is hiding something?" Peng Xiang said, "This is only my guess. I think that even he does not know. After all, he is not a dragon god, so there are some things that he is not completely clear about." Wei Zihong thought for a while and waved his hand. He said carelessly, "Don't worry about this. As long as the Dragon Realm submits, it is not a big deal to be discovered by the people of 1K Galaxy. If news of this gets out, it might affect their morale." As they spoke, a disciple hurried into the hall and reporting to everyone, "Heaven Lord, he has returned." Wei Zihong's expression changed. He looked at Sima Quan and Peng Xiang and smiled. Since Heaven Lord he has returned safely, then the matter of the Dragon Realm must have ended. Why don't the two of you come with me to welcome him? Sima Quan said, "Of course." The three of them left the hall and went to the platform outside. When Xian Yin saw the three of them coming out to welcome them, he immediately bowed and said, "Shang Wei greets you, Dao Friends greets you." Wei Zihong returned the greeting and said with a smile, "Zhenren He, was your trip smooth?" Xian Yin bowed slightly and said, "Fortunately, I did not disappoint you." Wei Zihong's eyes lit up. He took a step to the side and made an inviting gesture. "Heaven Lord He, please enter the hall and explain." The four of them returned to the main hall together. After a brief exchange of modesty, They took their respective seats. After He Xianyin sat down, he narrated the details of this trip in detail. When Wei Zihong and the other two heard this, a feeling of disbelief arose in their hearts. Every once in a while, the dragon monarch would go out for a tour and stay at a certain place for a long time. After He Xianyin followed Qi Zhaolan into the dragon realm, he only waited for 3 days before he found an opportunity. The dragon realm had been peaceful for a long time. Moreover, the elders intentionally indulged themselves and did not take any precautions. As soon as He Xianyin took out his magic treasure, he easily took down the dragon monarch. The whole process was almost without a hitch. Even when the commotion spread, other than a few of the dragon monarch's personal attendants, no one came out to stop him. He Xianyin said, "This dragon monarch has a body of cultivation, but has no experience in fighting. He was suppressed by my magic treasure the moment he came out. Even if I did not hide from the heavens beforehand, there would not be any accidents." Wei Zihong said, "How is Dao Friend Qi?" He Xianyin said, "Dao Friend Qi was not lying. After he received the blood letter, no one in the dragon realm came out to oppose him. He successfully ascended to the position of dragon monarch. I waited for a few months and confirmed that nothing was wrong. Just now I am returning." Wei Zihong said, "When can the dragon realm be of use to me?" He Xianyin said, "Dao Friend Qi clearly said that once he has sorted out some miscellaneous matters in the dragon realm, he will come and join us. It will be done in about half a month." Sima Quan said in a low voice, "According to Heaven Lord He, the dragon realm is so weak. Does it really have the ability to help me?" He Xianyin said, "The elders of the dragon realm are not easy to bully. Not to mention their combat ability, their cultivation is far above that of the dragon monarch. In fact, when I entered, 4 or 5 of them sensed me, but they pretended not to know." Wei Zihong understood. The dragon realm had been in deep trouble for a long time. The dragon monarch had been unpopular for a long time. He was afraid that they would not be able to wait for He Xianyin to be taken down. This time, He Xianyin was just using them to completely ignite the fire. Peng Xiang said, "Where is the dragon monarch now?" He Xianyin said calmly, "I have brought him back. I can hand him over to sect leader Wei at any time." Wei Zihong changed his mind. This dragon monarch might still be of some use. There was no need to kill him. He could be suppressed in the mountain and sea realm. Once the dragon realm submitted, the next step would be to attack Luo Zhutian. He raised his head and asked, "Sect leader Sima, how much longer will it take to finish?" Sima Quan replied, "More than half of the heavenly formation has been completed. However, in order to numb the enemy, we have not called back our men. The rest of the heavenly realm will be completed in half a month at most." Wei Zihong thought for a moment and said, "Sect leader Sima, I will have to trouble you to send a message for me. In 30 days, I will summon all the fellow Taoists here for a meeting." The Constant Heaven sect was not small. They had many monsters as their wings. If they wanted to conquer this place, they would have to find a way to gather the strength of both the mountain and sea realm and green jade sky. Sima Quan replied, "I will do it now." He immediately left the main hall and personally wrote a letter to deliver. The Grotto Heaven realm cultivators were easier to deal with. With the protection of the forbidden formation, there was no need for them to guard a place. However, the mortal metamorphosis realm cultivators still had to be on guard against the void god monsters that could attack at any time, so they couldn't come personally. However, after hearing the news, they could send their avatars over, and things wouldn't be delayed. 2 days later, Chang Hu and a few other Taoists were returning from the outside. They looked tired. They had been fighting for the past few months. More than 100 days ago, they had encountered an extremely troublesome monster. They had worked together and used up all of their pure violet spiritual qi and pills. Just now, they had exterminated the monster. They had to return to the palace to replenish themselves. However, as soon as they entered the palace, they felt that the atmosphere was different from when they left. At this moment, they saw a Taoist walking out of the palace. They recognized him as a Taoist surnamed Gu from the Victory Accumulation Heaven. They greeted him from afar and said, "Greetings, fellow Taoist Gu." The Taoist surnamed Gu also saw them. He came forward and bowed. He smiled and said, "Greetings, fellow Taoists. Are you here for the meeting next month?" Chang Hu said, "What meeting?" The Taoist surnamed Gu was very surprised. He looked at them and said, "Don't you know?" Chang Hu said, "We encountered a powerful monster and fought for 100 days. Just now we have one, so we don't know what happened here." The Taoist surnamed Gu suddenly said, "No wonder." He paused. "So, you don't know what happened in the palace?" Seeing that Chang Hu and the others nodded, he said, "Not long ago, a person from the mountain and sea realm who was in charge of the central administration came. His surname is Wei, and he said that he has an order from the Xianyuan Exalted Lord. So, from now on, we may have to listen to his orders." Chang Hu's heart skipped a beat. These days, he had been fighting for credit and had been traveling among the Yuhuan Taoists. This was so that the Yuhuan Taoists could form a connection. That way, the cultivators of the 9 continents could be excluded. His considerations were practical. As long as the Yuhuan Taoists obtained enough results, it would be enough to prove that this way of doing things was very suitable for the current situation. In this way, there would be no reason to change anything. As long as the cultivators of the 9 continents could not interfere, the Yuhuan Taoists could maintain their autonomy. Now that they heard that someone in charge had arrived, they instinctively felt wary. He laughed coldly and said, "We Yuhuan Taoists have our own way of doing things. We don't need others to tell us what to do." He believed that although the mountain and sea realm had people like the Xianyuan Exalted Lord, when comparing the cultivators of the mountain and sea realm, they could not compare to the Yuhuan Taoists. Furthermore, the founder of Green Jade Palace was also a true young expert. They were on equal footing, so why did they have to be ordered around by the cultivators of the mountain and sea realm? Beside him, Taoist Jia said, "No matter what, this person is in charge of the overall situation. Since you and I are here, why don't we go pay a visit to him? At least we can ask for some face." Chang Hu snorted and flicked his sleeve. "What does that have to do with me?" He did not want to stay here for long. Just as he was about to go back and get some pills and violet clear spiritium, a disciple walked over. He bowed to them and said, "Venerable Taoists, Wei Shangzhen has heard that you have arrived. He has ordered this disciple to invite you in for a chat." Chang Hu frowned. It was one thing not to take the initiative to greet them, but it was another thing to refuse them directly. He thought for a moment, then took a deep breath and said, "Lead the way." The disciple said, "Venerable Taoists, please follow me." Chang Hu and the others followed the disciple into the main hall. They saw that Sima Quan and Peng Xiang were both here, but on the main seat stood a young Taoist dressed in a black robe. There was a vertical mark between his brows. They knew that this was Wei Shangzhen. They came up to greet him with indifferent expressions. After a few polite words, they all took their seats in the main hall. Wei Zihong said, "Ever since I came here, I have often heard of Taoist Yu Huan's reputation. It's just that I have never met you before. Today, I heard that you have returned to the palace city, so I invited you over for a chat." Chang Hu sat there without saying a word or moving, as if this matter did not concern him. Taoist Jia coughed and said, "But why have you called us here?" Wei Zihong said in a serious tone, "I've invited all of you here precisely for the matter that will be discussed next month." With a wave of his hand, the 1K star flow map appeared. The Luo Zhu Tian was especially bright, instantly attracting everyone's attention. "I'm preparing to unite the cultivators of the Shanhai clan and the Yuhuan clan to attack this realm next month." When Chang Hu heard this, his eyes instantly widened. He stood up abruptly and stared at Wei Zihong. He said fiercely, "Forgive me for being blunt, but isn't Wei Shangzhen being too aggressive with such a big move? If any accident were to happen, it would be a complete collapse." Chapter 1856. Wei Zihong, on the other hand, did not look angry at all. Instead, he said sincerely, "If Chang Shang really has any suggestions, feel free to share them with us." Before this, he had tried to understand these Yuhuan Taoists. Chang Su and the others seemed to have other plans. He could understand this. In terms of strength, the Yu Huan Taoists were indeed a level higher than the Mountain Sea sect, so they were definitely more ambitious. However, he had to make a clear distinction between what was important and what was not. The root of the battle between the two worlds was the fight between his teacher and the supreme being behind him. If this continued, the Xinyuan faction would definitely need to take charge of the situation. Only then would they be able to develop their strength. If the Yu Huan Taoists were to take charge, due to their different goals, there would definitely be some deviation in the process. The reason he had invited these people over was to sort out this matter before the official discussion, so as to avoid further disputes. Sima Quan and Peng Xiang looked on coldly from the side. They were very clear about some of Chang Su's secret tricks, but because Wei Zihong had not made his stance clear, they did not say anything. Regardless of what they were thinking, at least on the surface, Chang Su appeared to be doing his best and had not yet reached the point of conflict. However, if the other party obstructed their plans, they would not hesitate to use any means necessary. Chang Su looked at the map and said in a heavy voice, "I'm afraid that Wei Shangzhen does not know, but in the past 100 days, I have joined forces with a few other Taoists to fight against a Taoist. Its strength is truly beyond what we have seen in the past, and we almost lost our lives there. After that, we used all of our means to take it down just now. If we had allowed it to charge into the world below, the consequences would have been unimaginable." Wei Zihong's expression turned serious. "In that case, fellow Taoists have resolved a dangerous situation. This can be said to be a great contribution. After this matter is over, I will write a letter to ask for your reward." Chang Su frowned. "That's not what I want to say." He pointed upwards. "I've heard of Luo Zhu Tian before. That's where the Eternal Heaven sect, one of the strongest forces in the 1K star stream, resides. I don't know how many of the monsters that we've encountered before are here. If we attack like this and fail, how many of us will be able to return?" At this point, he raised his voice and said passionately, "Everyone, it has not been easy for us to conquer the situation in front of us. What we have to do next is to fight steadily and slowly, and at the same time, train and promote the younger generation of disciples. Although this is a little slow, as long as we are careful not to make any big mistakes and accumulate small victories into big victories, sooner or later, we will be able to conquer the 1K star stream. When I have conquered the entire world, I believe that many fellow Taoists will be able to use this opportunity to see through the barrier of the realm, and many of our disciples will also be honed. This is killing many birds with one stone." Wei Zihong glanced at him. Although this person had a lot of selfish motives, his words were not wrong. Under normal circumstances, perhaps he would have prioritized stability. However, because this involved a confrontation between powerful figures, it was absolutely impossible to slow down. This went against the fundamental wishes of his master, and this reason could not be casually revealed, so he had to reject this suggestion. He said, "Fellow Taoists' words make some sense." When Chang Su heard this, he thought that Wei Zihong had accepted his suggestion, and his expressions softened a little. Moreover, if this matter were to be spread out, it would be considered as his persuasion, and it would greatly help his sect's reputation. He was secretly delighted. "So, His Majesty has really agreed?" Wei Zihong shook his head. "No, this matter cannot be delayed. Instead, it has to be done as soon as possible. It is imperative that we attack Luo Zhu Tian." Chang Su was stunned, and then he asked angrily, "Why is that?" Wei Zihong said with a serious expression, "Since I am here under the orders of my master, I naturally have my reasons. You don't need to understand why, you just need to follow the orders." Chang Su snorted to express his dissatisfaction. Although he had the intention to oppose it, it was only in private. He would not be stupid enough to say it out loud, because doing so would only become an excuse for the other party to bully him. Wei Zihong's gaze shifted to the Yu Huan cultivators beside Chang Su, and he said, "The meeting next month will be held. I hope that all of you will be present." Chang Su expressionlessly said, "We understand. If there is nothing else, I will take my leave." Wei Zihong nodded in agreement, and he cupped his hands, saying, "There are many things to do in outer space, and I still need to rely on everyone. I will not stay here any longer. After we take down this world, I will celebrate with everyone." Chang Su cupped his hands, and he left with his people without looking back. Peng Xiang said, "This person seems to be dissatisfied." Wei Zihong said, "Attacking Luo Zhu Tian is related to Master's grand plan, and it is absolutely irreversible. I have already said my good words, and if anyone dares to disobey, I will not tolerate it." He looked at He Xianyin and said, "Heavenly Lord I will send a letter to the other heavenly lords, but to show my sincerity, I will have to trouble you to invite them." He Xianyin cupped his hands and said, "Heavenly Lord Wei is too polite, just leave this matter to me." Wei Zihong passed down the tasks one by one. Not long after, rays of light crossed the two realms and flew towards the various heavens of the Yuhuan heavens. Chang Su was outside, but his expression was cold. Daoist Ku asked, "Chang Shangzhen, why are you so angry? Even if we attack Luo Zhu Tian with our strength, we might not lose." Chang Su snorted and said, "How can it be so simple? Luo Zhu Tian is such a difficult place to conquer, and if we force our way through, there will definitely be casualties. How many people does the mountain and sea realm have? Won't they still have to rely on me? When the time comes, won't we be the ones to die? In fact, we might even lose our lives." Daoist Ku smiled bitterly and said, "But so what? The palace lord has already said that we will listen to the Xianyuan exalted sovereign. Now that the disciple of the exalted sovereign has spoken to me, there is no way I can refuse. If I disobey, we will be the ones to suffer." Chang Su was dissatisfied, and this was what he felt the most helpless about. He could not openly oppose the other party, and so he smiled coldly and said, "I naturally do not intend to disobey the edict, but I do not necessarily have to do as he says." Daoist Ku was confused and asked, "What does Chang Shangzhen want to do?" Chang Su said, "When the meeting next month comes, we can say that we just happened to encounter a powerful deity and could not get away for a while." This was actually very simple. He had fought many deities, and sometimes he would defend, and sometimes he would attack. He had more or less figured out his opponent's background, and it would not be difficult to encounter a powerful opponent at that time. That way, he would have an excuse to refuse. Of course, this method could only be used by himself. If he dared to go around and mess things up, he would be seeking his own death. Therefore, he could only hope that his fellow Taoists would understand his intentions. Within the primordial sea of the void, a huge palace was traveling in this place. The young man that the golden phoenix had transformed into sat on a praying mat, looking at the Empyrean world and calculating with his mind. After an unknown period of time, he had a faint feeling in his heart, and his expression immediately brightened up. He thought to himself, according to the method described in the talisman book, that place should be here. He followed the instructions of the spell and placed his divine will on it. Instantly, he felt his body sink, and when he looked outside, he suddenly realized that the palace had landed on a piece of land. It was just that during the process, he did not even feel like he had traveled through the space between realms. He tried to calculate the past and the future, but he found that everything was empty. There was nothing at all, as if everything in front of him had been born out of thin air. However, this also proved that he had not come to the wrong place. Looking around, this place could be said to be full of vitality, but other than the spirits of plants, there were no birds or beasts, and there was no sound coming from the surroundings. It was as if the world had stopped, so not only did he not feel comfortable here, but he also felt strangely depressed. After sensing for a long time, he saw a boundary. There was a crack in the ground that extended downwards, and the inside of it was unusually bright. He changed his mind and appeared above. Then, without thinking too much, he immediately jumped down. In a flash, he arrived in front of a cave. He took a step inside, and suddenly his body felt light, as if in an instant all the karma of the past had left him. But deep down, he knew that this was probably because this place was isolated from the world, and that was why this feeling appeared. When he returned to the outside world, everything would return to normal, unless he landed here forever. But even if he wanted to, the Almighty who was driving him behind the scenes would not let him be so free. So at this point, he could only follow the arrangements of the Almighty and walk step by step. Could it be that this is the cave that the Almighty once stayed in? He calmed himself down and walked 3 steps up the wide and long stone steps, and arrived at the front yard of the cave. In front of him was a long table, and on the table was a jade box, which was a golden talisman that was suspended in the air. He came to the table, and his eyes first fell on the golden talisman, but the item shook and slowly retreated a little. He suddenly realized that it was not the time to touch this item, so he looked at the jade box and used his mana, wanting to open it. But under his efforts, the item did not move, and he was a little surprised. He took a closer look and found that there was no restriction, and there was nothing wrong with the jade box, so the strangeness might be with the item inside. His thoughts turned a few times. In this world, there were a few things that could evade the interference of transcendence energy, but in reality, these were all relative. With his cultivation level, even if he could not move all the things in the world, he would still be slightly affected. However, there was one thing that was an exception, and that was the Jade of Origin of Zhou. This item could not be directly taken by mana, so no matter how high one's cultivation was, it would be useless. Thinking about this, his heart suddenly burned with passion. That person pointed him here, and this item was placed here. Could it be that they wanted to give him a path to heaven? Speaking of which, he had already reached the 3rd level of the mortal metamorphosis realm, but he still did not step into the realm of enlightenment, so that one day, he would have the opportunity to reach the true Yang realm. Although he knew that this was very likely to be an extravagant hope, everyone in the world had a chance to reach enlightenment. As long as he could continue to exist, then it was very likely that he would be able to wait for this opportunity. But no matter what, before seeing the real item inside, these were just his own guesses. He steadied his mind, then reached out and opened the jade box. Chapter 1857. Once the jade box was opened, the young man hurriedly looked inside. However, in the next moment, he was stunned. The box was empty. There was nothing in it. Even with his cultivation, he was disappointed. He sighed in his heart and thought about it. How could it be so easy to obtain such a divine object? It was just wishful thinking. However, when he looked at the jade box again, a strange feeling rose in his heart. He reached out and pressed on it. After a while, he was sure that although the Zhou Huanyuan jade was not in it, it must have been placed here before. Moreover, it had been a long time, causing the item to change its nature. That was why he could not move it with his Fa Li. Thinking about this, he could not help but think. There was a deep meaning behind every action of such a powerful person. There must be a reason for the empty box to be placed here. However, he did not understand. What was the purpose of this? Was it to tell him that as long as he followed the path that he had planned, he would be able to obtain the item? Or was it to tell him that he had the ability to obtain the Zhou Huanyuan jade? But no matter what, he finally saw a chance to achieve Dao. Originally, he was forced to do this out of helplessness. However, after this encounter, his mind became active. He raised his head and looked at the location of the golden talisman. Since that person had summoned him here, he must have some specific instructions. Moreover, this item had landed in an obvious place. Since there was nothing in the jade box, he would definitely be able to find the answer here. Just as he was thinking about this, the item swayed in the air and slowly floated over. He noticed the slight changes here and became even more certain of his guess just now. Just as he was about to go forward and grab it, the golden talisman suddenly moved and turned into a golden light that entered between his brows. In an instant, the memories of the ancestral vein that had been hidden in his bloodline surfaced. Some of them were things he had seen a long time ago, but there were also some that he had never seen before. He was very surprised. Ever since he had achieved mortal transformation, his physical body had already been shed. Now, only his Dharma body remained. Although the image of the golden phoenix had appeared before, it was only a change after copying the original body. In reality, he had long since severed the connection with his past. Logically speaking, he should not be able to see these, but now, he seemed to have reconnected with them. The Golden Luan lineage was similar to the dragon lineage. They had once received the bell of heaven and earth and were born with great divine power. Although they were not comparable to Khanate demons, there was a limit to the difference between the two. The earliest phoenix was born in the Kunshur continent during the First Era. It could be said that it had entered the world earlier than Bai Wei and the others. But even so, when it came to the end of the Second Era, because of the prosperity of the human Tao, it also died out during the cycle of the eras. Although the later generations inherited its abilities, as it was passed down from generation to generation, it gradually weakened. Therefore, when it came to his generation, his innate divine ability had become very weak. Later on, he had no choice but to seek refuge under the tutelage of a great expert and guard the cave for that expert. Because he was obsessed with the upper state and was unwilling to step onto the path of enlightenment, his combat ability was actually not very strong. Otherwise, the Golden Luan sect would not have been destroyed by the great experts of Mount Qingjue. But now, he realized that he had regained some of the divine ability of his ancestors with the Golden Talisman. He could feel that even if a cultivator who had gone through the first or second tribulations of enlightenment stood in front of him, he would not have to fear them. This was a pleasant surprise. But after the joy, he suddenly thought of the two descendants of the deities in the 1K star stream. His current situation was similar. He then shook his head. No matter what, his abilities had obviously improved. As long as it did not affect his future cultivation, this little change was not a big deal. His gaze gradually became sharp. Since he had benefited from it, he naturally had to do that thing. 1K star stream, Palace of the Nine Cities. Wei Zihong was currently entertaining Yi Haitian Heaven Lord Ao Shao in the palace. Although there were many cultivators in the Enlightenment realm in the Yuhuan All Heavens, there were very few who had reached the fourth tribulation realm like Ao Shao. Moreover, Zhang Yan and Ao Shao had been allies before he attained the True Yang realm. Their relationship was different, and Ao Shao was the earliest among the All Heaven Sky Masters to arrive. Hence, Wei Zihong was very polite when he received Ao Shao. After a few rounds of wine, he said, "I took the liberty of inviting Heaven Lord Ao Shao here this time. I hope that I have not disturbed your realm." Ao Shao smiled and said, "Wei Shangzhen, what are you talking about? I only focus on cultivating in my residence. Wen Chao takes care of the mundane affairs for me, so there is no need for me to ask too much. This time, it involves the war between the two realms. Not only is the Xianyuan High Holiness concerned, but even the Green Jade Heaven is paying great attention to it. As the Yi Haitian Heaven Lord, I naturally have to do my best." After chatting for a while, Ao Shao put down his wine cup and asked, "Wei Shangzhen, I heard that there are also dragons of my generation in this realm?" Wei Zihong said, "It is indeed so. These dragons have gathered in a realm and their forces are quite huge." Ao Shao pondered for a while and said, "I heard that these dragons have joined Shangzhen's side. Can I meet them?" Wei Zihong saw his expression and guessed that there must be some unknown reason behind it. However, he was not interested in knowing about the secrets of the true dragons. He said, "The new dragon monarch has just ascended the throne. Now that we are stabilizing the situation in this realm, this dragon will attack Luo Zhu Heaven with me soon. You will see him in a few days, Heaven Lord Ao." Ao Shao nodded and said, "Thank you, Wei Shangzhen." Wei Zihong smiled and said, "Heaven Lord Ao, you are too kind. This is just a small matter." After the banquet ended, Wei Zihong returned to the main hall to check on the news that Luo Zhu Heaven had sent just now. He knew that as more and more enlightenment cultivators entered this realm, they might attract the attention of the powerful being behind them. Even with the protection of his master's qi, the powerful being could still find a way to pass down in order to raise the vigilance of these deities and their descendants. Therefore, if they were unlucky, this battle might turn into a direct confrontation. Therefore, it was not too much to be serious. At the same time, in the depths of the void crack, Chang Su and the others arrived. He pointed to a certain realm and said, "This is the place. The last time we met that deity, it was not easy for us to kill it. There are a few powerful qi movements in this realm that are very different from the others. I suspect that there is something mysterious hidden in this realm. Perhaps there are some treasures hidden in it. Why don't you all follow me and explore it? Even though he did have the objective of investigating this place, his main objective was to avoid the meeting next month. He was very clear in his heart that even though he had made sufficient preparations this time, he wouldn't be able to divert his attention if he were to encounter that kind of monster again. In fact, he understood that there were a few other Yuhuan cultivators who had made the same decision as him. Of course, they did not do this to comply with him, but out of consideration for their own benefits. Although the Yuhuan cultivators did not come from the same place, their current interests were the same. It was obvious that the faster this battle ended, the fewer karma points they would be able to obtain. Therefore, from this perspective, the people from Yuhuan naturally hoped that the battle could continue to drag on, and the longer the better. Priest Ku, who was traveling with him, was a little nervous. He transmitted a message to Chang Su with his divine will and said, "Brother Chang, do you really want to do this? If we don't go, it would be too disrespectful." Chang Su replied, "I risked my life to fight that deity, so I can't go. Is he going to use this to pressure me?" Priest Ku couldn't help but sigh. He had a feeling that this wasn't the right thing to do. Some things didn't depend on reality, but on one's heart. If he really wanted to punish someone, this excuse would be too far-fetched. However, since he was already here, he could not turn back. He could only go through this together. Mountain and Sea Realm. Chinsong School. Dragon Abyss Marsh. Vast Radiance Small Realm. A jade-green lotus leaf throne floated down from the river, upon which Wu Qingqing stood. Her hair was combed into a flying fairy bun, and she wore a sleeveless green orchid robe with ice beads embroidered on it. She wore a tassel pendant on her belt, and on her smooth forehead hung a small and exquisite moon pendant. Half of the pendant was a string, and the other half was a circle. A warm breeze blew past, and the jade leaves rippled in the water. Her robe fluttered in the wind, and she looked like a god. The lotus leaf throne didn't take long to reach the shore, where it gently bumped against the pebbles and stopped. She took a step forward, and then, like glass breaking, the scenery around her shattered. When everything was restored, she was in an elegant immortal's cave. On the roof of the mansion, there was an opening in a cloud basin, and a strand of brilliant light flowed down, sprinkling into the fragrant flower courtyard. A clear spring flowed down from the wall, and the sound of water rippled. There were a few green orchids and vermilion trees planted on the side of the road, and strings of pearl-shaped jade fruits hung heavily there. Under the moisture of the water, they looked beautiful and delightful. She stepped on an embroidered stool and arrived at the soft jade couch. She stretched out her sleeves and sat down. Her slender fingers flicked lightly, and the air stirred. The mist surged, and the immortal's cave was filled with countless clear sounds, like the sound of a stream in a deep valley or the sound of a harp. After a while, a small white sable leaped out upon hearing her voice. Its eyes were like scarlet jade, exceptionally bright, and its fur was like brocade. In its mouth was a letter. After entering, it jumped onto the embroidered stool, put down the letter, and chirped at her twice. Wu Qingqing picked up the letter and stared at it for a moment. After a moment's thought, she got off the couch and went to the back room of the immortal's cave. There was a stone lotus cup made of water, and she bowed to it. In this stone lotus cup, there was a strand of God's will left behind by Mu Shoshan. When she was cultivating in the past, she often came here to ask for advice, but as time passed, the God's will became fainter and fainter. She did not know when it would completely disappear, and then there would be no trace of it left in the world. Although they were master and disciple, and she was personally chosen by Mu Shoshan before he died, she had never seen her master in person. Many of her skills were learned from the God's will. She originally had a few senior brothers, but they were all dead now. She was the only one left to guard the sect. But no one would have thought that when she first entered the sect, she was an inconspicuous little girl. Today, she cut off her mortal body and became immortal. Master, since sect leader Wei has sent a letter to invite me to conquer the 1K star stream, then I will go as well, so that the people outside will know that there are people under Mu Shoshan." After she finished speaking, she bowed again, turned around, and left. In a moment, a golden light shot up, and she had already transcended the mortal world and left the universe. Chapter 1858. A month passed quickly, and the day of the meeting drew closer. Because of Wei Zihong's invitation, many Yuhuan Taoists and mountain and sea cultivators arrived at Nine Peaks Palace City. Yuhuan Heavenly Lord Qing Li of Sunrise Heaven, Heavenly Lord Yi Hongtu of Jinji Heaven, Heavenly Lord Chang Ji of Jiang Heaven, Taoist Ling Yinxing of Ishu Heaven, Heavenly Lord Di Fenghe of Duhuan Heaven, Heavenly Lord Mei Ruoqing of Fixed Star Heaven, Heavenly Lord Fan Shu of Longhe Heaven, and the other cultivators of Enlightenment Heaven had all arrived. Among them, Heavenly Lord Qing Li of Sunrise Heaven and Ao Shao had similar cultivation bases, so he was more confident in dealing with the sect leader of the Eternal Heaven sect. Within Green Jade Palace, Elder Peng still had to oversee the palace, so he couldn't be present. However, Guan Longzhao and Feng Lan, the two hall elders, were present. Regardless of their cultivation bases, they had clearly shown the attitude of Green Jade Palace, all for the sake of helping Wei Zihong suppress the Yuhuan Taoists. As for the mountain and sea realm, because of the abundance of spiritual energy, many of the sect leaders and elders of the 9 continents were in secluded meditation. Only Wu Qingqing of the Yinsong sect, Sun Huaying of the Shaoqing sect, and a few other cultivators who had just severed their mortal bodies came. However, in the lower realm of the mountain and sea, the Junqian realm and Yunshu realm had both sent powerful cultivators. As for Mount Qingjue of Huantong sect, which was now part of the mountain and sea realm, 4 tribulation-passing cultivators, including mountain chief Yen Du, had come. For this battle, more than half of the forces of the heavens and 2 realms had gathered. Just now, Qi Xiaolan, who had become a dragon monarch not too long ago, had also arrived. He was in high spirits as the ruler of the dragon realm, but upon arriving at 9 Peaks Palace City, he had no choice but to restrain himself. At the same time, he was shocked. He hadn't expected Tao Lord Xinyuan to have so many followers. Although he didn't know how many monsters there were in the Wanke Void, his instincts told him that they couldn't compare to the almighty beings here, and he couldn't help but secretly rejoice that he had joined them. Over the past few days, he had visited many powerful beings. Suddenly, he heard that there was a heavenly master here who was a true dragon. Hence, he went to El Gate. However, when he saw Ao Shao, he suddenly felt as though he was naturally under Ao Shao. He instinctively felt a sense of reverence. He bowed and said, "Greetings, Supreme Lord." Ao Shao took a few glances at him and said, "You are indeed a dragon of my generation." It was rumored that all true dragons had a single source, and they were known as the dragon ancestor by many dragon species. It was precisely this person's consciousness that was reflected in all the worlds, and just now, a dragon species had manifested. However, only those who had reached a certain level could vaguely sense it, and they could not confirm it. At least in Bu Su Tian, he had not seen any dragon species, but now that he was in 1K Star Stream, he had heard that they existed. That was why he wanted to come and take a look. Now that he saw Qi Xiaolan, it seemed to confirm it. But at the same time, he was also worried that the dragon ancestor might be related to the mighty behind the 1K Starstream. He asked, "Sect Master Qi, do you know the origins of your clan?" Qi Xiaolan was taken aback. He immediately replied, "Exalted Lord, I am naturally aware of this." The most important thing in the 1K stellar stream was bloodline inheritance. Although the dragon race was not a divine monster, there were still things similar to the bloodline inheritance blood disk. Ao Shao's expression turned serious. He asked, "Then do you know who the origin of the ancestral bloodline is?" Qi Xiaolan hesitated for a moment, then said, "The origin of the ancestral bloodline is a secret of the clan." He paused for a moment, and his expression turned serious. "But since Exalted Lord has asked, I can't refuse to answer you. It's just that it's not good for me to tell you about this. I will bring a copy of the bloodline inheritance rubbing for Exalted Lord to take a look." However, it only concerns the origin of the main bloodline, so please forgive me for not disclosing the details. Ao Xiao nodded. He could understand why Qi Xiaolan was doing this. It was understandable that Qi Xiaolan was doing this because it concerned the bloodline inheritance of the clan. Instead, he was being a little unreasonable. He said, I heard that you are cultivating divine abilities. I happen to have a Xian technique here. If you don't mind, you can take a look at it. Qi Xiaolan's eyes widened. He reached out and took it. He could not wait to flip through it. He was extremely excited and thanked Ao Xiao profusely. In the 1K stellar stream, once the descendants of the deities and monsters had reached a certain level, they would have to rely on the divine essence of the underworld to continue cultivating. However, the dragon realm had never used this item. They relied entirely on their innate talents. It was only after interacting with Taoist cultivators that he realized the benefits of spiritual opportunity. Even without the divine essence of the underworld, he could still use it to reach a higher realm. However, there was a problem. There was no proper cultivation method. Over the past few days, he had sought guidance from some powerful cultivators. He was prepared to go back and try to derive a cultivation method with the elders of the dragon realm. However, how could it compare to what Ao Xiao had imparted to him? Not only was it an orthodox Qi path cultivation method, but it also originated from the dragon race. It was extremely compatible with them. It was not difficult for the clan to be inspired by this technique. It was no wonder that he was so happy. In the main hall, Wei Zihong was listening to a disciple's report. Everyone, Exalted Lord and Heavenly Lord, are almost all here. Wei Zihong said, there are still 2 days before the meeting. Is there anyone else outside? The disciple replied, Reverend, other than the Exalted Lord who was sent by the palace to intercept the deities and monsters, only Chang Su and the others are currently missing. Wei Zihong was not surprised at all when he heard this. He said, tell me the names of those who have yet to arrive. The disciple acknowledged and reported the names one by one according to the name list. However, when he read the names, he felt diffident. For those mortal metamorphosis cultivators, if someone mentioned their name, they would more or less be able to sense it. Even though they knew that they would not come looking for trouble, they still felt a sense of fear. After listening to the disciple, Wei Zihong realized that there were a total of 8 people here. If they were not close to Chang Su, they were on good terms with him. He sneered. 8 mortal metamorphosis cultivators were a powerful force. Even though they could not change the outcome of the battle, if they were used well, they could still be an amazing move. However, even though Chang Su was only pretending to obey, Yu Zihong could not deal with these people right now. If he wanted to take them back, he would definitely need more people to do it. Yu Zihong did not have the time to do so, nor would he take the risk of attacking his own people instead of attacking the enemy. Even if he could capture them, how to deal with them was a problem. If he punished them now, it would hurt Taoist Yu Huanxiu's morale. If he wanted to do this, he would have to wait until after the matter was over. Those who could come here were obviously willing to listen to the Exalted Lord's orders. This was enough. Moreover, in his original plan, he did not want to directly charge towards Luo Zhutian. He was prepared to feign an attack somewhere, then gather his forces and suddenly kill his way here. Since Chang Su and the others were willing to take the initiative to share the pressure and attract the attention of the void deities and monsters, he did not intend to pay too much attention to them. Of course, this was not enough. He pondered for a while and said, go and invite sect leader Tong Guang and sect leader Gui here. The disciple heaved a sigh of relief and hurriedly went to pass on the order. Not long after, Tanhua Sect's sect leader Tong Guang and Gurgling Lake Sect's sect leader Guojuing came together. After the 2 parties greeted each other, Wei Zihong said a few polite words and said, both of you want to know. After this meeting, we will prepare to attack Luo Zhutian. However, both of you do not need to go there this time. Oh! The 2 of them looked at each other and guessed that they might be required to do something important. Guojuing asked tentatively, Sect Leader Wei, do you have other instructions? Wei Zihong said, exactly. With a thought, the map of the 1K star stream floated out from the palace. He pointed at a certain place, This is the mystic tide sky. Although the forces here are not as strong as the Luozhu sky, they are not too far off. Not long ago, I found out that almost every large sect in the 1K star stream has a deity guarding the sect. The Constant Heaven sect is like this, and so is the Mo sect in the mystic tide sky. However, the strength of the deity is not the same. It is complementary to the sect. The source of its strength is innate, and the other is the sacrifice to the Void Mother. The Mo sect has been preparing for a great sacrifice to increase the strength of the deity. Before this, its strength was only a level lower than the Constant Heaven sect. Tong Guang thought for a while and said, "Sect leader Wei, you are saying that as long as this monster is raised, it can immediately become a large sect like the Constant Heaven sect?" Wei Zihong said, "That is the theory, but it is not that easy to achieve. However, to avoid any mishaps, we will try our best to eliminate this possibility." He looked at the two of them. "I need you two to lead all the mortal molting sect to attack this place." In his plan, Ao Shao would lead all the Duju cultivators to attack Luozhu Tian and destroy this place. Because of the battle between the Duju cultivators, the cultivators below this realm could not play a role. Therefore, the mortal molting cultivators and some of the monster's blood descendants that had submitted to them would be sent to deal with the Mo sect. Guojuing said, "If we do that, the other side will definitely sense the heavenly secrets. Who knows, they might be prepared." Wei Zihong smiled. "That is exactly what I want them to sense." The two of them immediately understood what he meant. They had actually taken the initiative to expose themselves to the other party. This was to conceal their true intentions. Taoist Tong Guang said, "Since Wei Xiangjun has already made arrangements, we are willing to follow his orders." Wei Zihong nodded. "Then I will leave this matter to the two of you." The two of them were from the same sect as the Qinsong school. They could be considered family, so he had nothing to worry about. Besides, it would be best if they could take down the miraculous tide heaven. If they failed, there would be no loss. Taoist Tong Guang and Guojuing, two people cupped their fists to him and withdrew. Wei Zihong took out a talisman from his sleeve and thought to himself, "It is time to release it." He tossed the talisman out, and it instantly appeared above the 9 palaces. A beam of golden light spread out, covering the entire palace and everyone within it. At the same time, all the cultivators could sense the vast Weili power coming from the talisman, and they couldn't help but feel awe and respect. Yuan Zun's talisman? The cultivators of the mountain and sea realm were fine, but some of the Yuhuan cultivators were secretly dissatisfied with Wei Zihong, a newly ascended mortal molting cultivator, taking charge of this matter. However, after seeing the talisman, everyone's hearts trembled, and they immediately put away their distracting thoughts. They obediently waited for the day of the meeting. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.